Week 3 of the Echelon Racing League, Stage 2 of the virtual Tour of the Gila, as we head up to the Mogollon climb today as the climbing finally starts after trial yesterday. A couple big rematches on tap today for Stage 2 as we look at both the stage and the overall here in the Echelon Racing League. As racing continues again into Week 3, the battle between Jackie Godby and Julia Scalu will be decided in the big climb, and we look to see if yesterday's winner, Jaden Yeager, can pick up another one on the way up the climb today. Brad Stoner here with Lauren Hall as we get ready for what is going to be a big day of racing. Lauren, mostly because we are finally looking at some big climbing here in the Echelon Racing League. We really have not had a long road race stage yet up until Week 3 here. So we're going to look at who can really bring the climbing legs to RGT today.
Yeah, we saw just a smidge of that at Iron Horse Bike Race with Scalu and Godby, but yeah, hopefully today we can really get some definitive lines out and see who can really take it to Godby. Maybe once today, Scalu's the one.
As we said, 2 races already on tap here in the Echelon Racing League, but they were mostly shorter criterium-type stages. And so the road racing, big opportunity today, especially for lighter riders like Julia Scalu. We started the season at Indy Crit and then went to Tour of America's Dairyland. Both were criterium-style races. And then Gateway Cup, a day of crit racing. The Iron Horse Bicycle Classic had a little bit of climbing, but it wasn't a climbing finish. It wasn't a mountaintop finish. And so day 2 of Tour of the Gila here is going to be the decisive day where we really see some climbing. Then we'll head to Tulsa Tough and Intelligentsia Cup next week as well. Here's the trophy that we're racing for here, the FT Trophy, first time in the history of competitive bike racing that we'll be giving away. NFT trophy, and we're also going to be talking about the very cool in real life trophies here at Tour of the Gila as well. All right, pro men up first today. They are assembling in our SIS Zoom room. We're going to be getting looks at these riders throughout the day today. Nice to see a strong field of riders assembling for this one. But Lauren, this is always a favorite. Everyone loves coming to race Tour of the Gila.
No doubt. And I think from our interview yesterday with Matt Usborne, we all know how hard this weekend's going to be. And today is just going to be a stickler. And I can't wait to see what Kevin Bouchard Hall can do and see if he can keep his position #1 pole.
Oh, Matt Usborne, we talked about the Above and Beyond Cancer rider with a 37-34 yesterday. Kevin Bouchard Hall crushing it with a 37-10 for Restart Racing. And then Jaden Yeager in third with a 37-44. So 3 very strong time trialists yesterday. But to get all these guys together in a group up at the front, and I'll add Ben Thomas to that list as well because he was right there with Jaden Yeager at that individual time trial. You look at those 4 names. If that group of 4 gets into a group, that could be very dangerous. They've been riding really well the last couple weeks, but we're really starting to see the top riders start to separate themselves here into Week 3, Lauren.
Yeah, and I think Project Echelon is definitely going to have their work cut out for them today, but who better to stack the top 10 than those guys? So, yeah, is it going to be a lot of breakaways like we've been seeing in the crits, and will it come down to a sprint? No, I don't think so. Not today.
Project Echelon has Zach Nairn third overall and Will Harden into fourth. The 2 teammates sitting in third and fourth, and then Restart Racing with Jaden Yeager in fifth overall. But Usborne remains the man to beat at 720 points, and obviously those points will be awarded at the end of Sunday's race. We're working on time first, a time-based GC system here, and another rider with the lowest total GC will move to a points-based system for the overall here in the Echelon Racing League. All right, let's talk about the big day of racing today, Lauren. This is a course that, anyone that ever raced as a professional bike racer in America knows this course. It's the climb up to the Mogollon, and it's really all about this big sting at the end.
Ooh-wee, man. I hated knowing that this was coming at the end of this race. This climb is a beast. No, thank you. I'm glad I'm sitting over on this side of the fence, and those guys are at the start gate, not me.
You can see the 7 to 9% gradient on the way up at the finish. It really never lets up in the last, let's say, 10 miles of racing. Only 30 miles total. They're going to pick up about 3,300 feet on the way up with a max gradient of 10.5%. So this is no joke. This is big-time bike racing here on RGT, and it is so cool that we're able to race these courses of real-life bike races as we welcome in Jack Brennan, our race director at the Tour of the Gila. Jack, everyone loves this course. This is what has made Tour of the Gila such a classic as we get ready to celebrate how many years this year in 2022?
Oh, it's hard to really decide what year it might be. They call it the 35th. No longer 35th running the Gila.
I like 35. Nice
States
round
with
number. Talk to me about the course
yes,
today. I mean, this is one that everyone knows, and this is where the race is really won and lost. I mean, our first big climbing test here.
there's a lot of action on the final climb. It's that get up Whitewater Mesa, and this cattle guard. It's 3 miles from there, just 3 miles. The torturous 3 miles of climb. And what I really like, this stage is we had a cattle guard out there. There's not a resort. There's nothing. It's just a cattle guard out there that we have the finish line. We have the stage. We have the podium. We have maybe room for on the sides of the road 10 vehicles. So we got to get people. During real life, we get people in. We get people in about to back to some remote area. No amenities, and it's a wonderful, wonderful climb. The roads aren't great. They're not engineered to be mountain roads like roads today is all engineered. It's not engineered. This is what when they're put in a path to the Mount of Mogollon. So that's what it is. It's very narrow. Turns are steep, and people are really glad when they get to Battle Guard.
Well, the good news is we don't have any of the bumps in the road on our GT. They have perfectly smooth roads on the way up to Mogollon today. So we still have to engineer the cattle guard in there. Jack, one of the other really cool things that I love about this race is the support that you guys get. You reached out to some of the contacts that helped make the Tour of the Gila possible, got some welcome videos for our riders, and I'm really excited about this one. So as we get into our first race of the day, our pro men, we have a special welcome here at Tour of the Gila.
Hello, I'm Howie Morales, Lieutenant Governor of New Mexico, and I want to say welcome to the 2022 virtual Tour of the Gila, and thank you for returning to this really special race that is heart and soul to beautiful Southwest New Mexico. If you haven't visited us here yet, please make a plan to do it in the near future. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Despite the big challenges of the COVID pandemic, I am very happy that this great Tour of the Gila is going to occur again this year, but virtually. For that, I am grateful to all the organizers and volunteers who make this race happen year after year. And we are grateful to you. I especially want to thank Jack Brennan and Brad Soner for leading the effort. We are excited to have Echelon Racing League provide the virtual platform, RGT Cycling, who have created an amazing in real life race course onto their cycle platform for this tour. I grew up my whole life in the community where the Tour of the Gila takes place, Silver City, New Mexico, and I live there still today with my children and my family. Let me tell you, we are honored and excited to have all the national and international attention that the Tour of the Gila brings to this state and this community. So please come back for the real race planned for April 27th to May 5th, God willing. I look forward to seeing all of you in person then. So good luck to everyone. Have a great race and many blessings.
How cool is that? It's a big deal, Lauren, when the lieutenant governor shows up, but he was right. This really is one of the most beautiful races in America, and this is one that everyone needs to put on their list. I know it was always a favorite of yours.
It is. It's an iconic race, and like Jack saying, 35 years, the roads are nothing to write home about. But that's the beauty of it. Is this is down home, good home style racing, right, Jack? I mean, all the volunteers that go into this is such a homegrown race, and I know we'll talk more about that with the trophies and everything that comes into play there. So, yeah, thank you guys for all of this.
Speaking of trophies, Jack, can you hold your trophy up real quick? We are just about 30 seconds away from race start here, but Jack showed us this morning. We're going to talk more about these trophies throughout the day today, but just a quick look at what our overall GC winners will be racing for today. We're going to be sending out the official Tour of the Gila virtual winners trophy. So they'll be racing for that today. And then, of course, we talked about the overall NFT as well. Jack, thank you so much. Enjoy your race today. I hope this one is easier than real life race promoting. So congratulations on all the success, and look at the there in person. All right, there he is, our SIS Zoom Room riders ready to as they start to ramp up the power here. Again, we talk about these starts on RGT. It's all about trying to maximize your power. When that clock hits 0, you want to have that engine revving as hot as possible.
Yep, and you know Kevin Bouchard Hall is going to want to be right there out front representing, covering anything early, and he's definitely going to be trying to secure that first place win from yesterday.
Well, certainly an element of confidence coming into a second day of racing. When you're hot as a bike racer. And so, yeah, as you said, a rider like Kevin Bouchard Hall, I think, certainly banks a little bit on his time trial performance yesterday. So no surprise to see him up near the front. But again, the start, super important here. What we see here mostly, Lauren, is riders getting spit out the back. That's the biggest concern, is that you lose contact with the group here early on in these chaotic virtual racing starts. If if you're new to the platform or you're new to watching virtual racing here, it is an entirely different style of racing that we're watching here on RGT.
Yeah, totally. And we've seen a couple of athletes throughout the last couple of weeks, have unfortunately had an internet situation or whatever, and just a couple of seconds off the back, and that's the game over. I mean, you've been warming up for 30 minutes, and then you can't even start. So, yeah, there's no catching back up. There's no in real life kind of drafting behind the team cars or anything to get back on. This is it.
I want to bring in former professional Garrett Peltonen, who is going to be joining us live from Silver City. Garrett's a former professional racer who is now a professor at Western New Mexico University. Garrett, this is also a race that you know well. Any fond or maybe not so fond memories of racing on the Mogollon for you?
Yeah, I'm probably on the not so fond part. The scenery is beautiful, but the hills are pretty big, especially today's finish. It's a steep little climb. It's sort of broken into a couple sections, and then tomorrow's stage is another really brutal one. So some of the harder racing you can get.
We talked about the road conditions as well. The cattle guard, this legendary cattle guard that Jack is talking about up at the finish. But, as Lauren has said, it's that's part of the brand. That's what Tour of the Gila is all about. It really is rough, rugged, remote racing up there, and that's really part of the cool charm as well. Part of where we're going up to today, I mean, we go by these like sort of ghost mining towns up towards some of the old mining towns up in the mountains. And so today has a very cool vibe to it on the way up.
Yeah, definitely. The stage starts out kind of in a flat valley. You go through some nice little towns. There's the town of Cliff, and then you go through Glenwood. And right after Glenwood, you take a sharp right-hand turn, and basically that starts the climb. And the climb sort of broke up into a couple little sections. There's a steep part initially, levels off, and then the final part is really hard. And I think you'll notice a lot of differences today. And we'll see how the guys from yesterday will fare today. I remember a couple of names from last year. We have Matt Usborne again, who did really well last year. So we'll see how he does today. And we have Kevin Bouchard Hall out there. So he looks pretty strong as well.
All right, we'll take a look at the front of the field here as we start to look at these early splits. We did see a few riders trying to get away, but you can see already in the view from our virtual helicopter here, a couple riders dangling off the back, but they'll be able to hang in. They'll stay calm. It probably won't be, it'll be 15 or 20 minutes before we see any real splits in this group. But Garrett was with us last year. He talked about Matt Usborne, one of the more aggressive riders in the race. And Lauren, I think today is a day where you start to see teams like Above and Beyond Cancer that can really use their team. Project Echelon can start to integrate some of those tactics from real racing to virtual racing on a day like today.
Exactly, and that's just like in real life what you would do. The race would usually have a break, go up the road, and just try and put the GC guys under some pressure, or the climbers under some pressure, and make those teams work and ride the front all day long. And you could just feel the tension building, like Garrett's talking to the right-hand corner over the cattle guard, and then that's when everything just seemed to have exploded. And that's when I said goodbye to my climbers and bid them adieu. And like Jack said, you'd always see the group coming back down after the finish if you're domestiques or whatever. And I always seemed to see everybody coming back down as I was finishing, going up to the infamous cattle guard.
That riding on the way up while the other riders are riding down. Like Jack said, there is no bus, there's no helicopter coming to pick you up off the top of the climb. So yeah, most of the time you had to ride back down. But I'm sure that was interesting seeing as you're still trying to finish. I can imagine how tough that is. Garrett, you were never there. You were always in the front group. I don't remember you ever getting dropped on the climb. No, your job was early on. I think I remember you really driving these early groups, right? You try and make it as tough as you can on the flats. You help out where you can. And then, like Lauren said, turn it over to the climbers.
Yeah, exactly. The job was just to get to the finish so you could survive another day. Today was a day like you have to finish within the time cut, because you need to be able to race tomorrow in the normal sort of racing situation. And then the Mogollon stage tomorrow, where there's a lot of riders. If you get to the cliff dwellings, where it's a turnaround place where a big climb starts, and a lot of riders like myself would pull the plug and call it a tour there. So it's definitely a race for the climbing specialists, and I was not considered one of those.
We were talking about some of the successes that came through Tour of Gila. We were talking about Kristen Armstrong. Her successful Olympic campaigns always seem to go through Silver City in the spring.
Yeah, Garrett, I was even going to say, even in the criterium, there's a climb.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't give us any free rides at Tour of the Gila.
No, you look at all of it, right? There's the time trial yesterday that had a big climb in it. The criterium had the climb. And then to top it off, right, we're all at about 6,000 feet. So that adds a little additional challenge to it as well with the altitude.
Exactly. The chip seal roads that we were talking about earlier, there's no forgiveness in this race, but that's the beauty of RGT is these guys are just smooth sailing. Kevin Bouchard Hall just really posted up.
Look at him. He's relaxed. I like the hat. He looks like he's out for a nice Saturday cruise. You mentioned the Criterium, a stage that you know well. We would be remiss if we didn't mention that Lauren was a Criterium stage winner. In fact, we uncovered exclusive video of Lauren's win. Watch this.
They've done a very good job. Often going players all over the front. Great call, Lauren Hall for the win, and the biggest win in her career. Off the
Now, that was before the Ghent-Wevelgem year, so it was the biggest win, maybe, of your career. But the look back right here, and then the celebration, I love it. What a year.
This was one of the first times Rachel definitely pinned me as a sprinter. And what I was telling Joelle was my last lead out. We go 1-2, and as I'm sprinting for the win, I'm looking back to her, cheering her on, saying that we're about to go 1-2. Because people think that I'm looking at her, yelling at her, and I'm like, no, I'm actually cheering each other on, because we just beat Shelley Olds and Allison Powers. Like, it was a pretty stacked field. And it was yeah, you're right. It was one of my first big wins, and kind of opened the door for a lot more success that I'm very thankful for.
I love the Criterium in Silver City, Garrett. It's such a cool crit course. I mean, as an American bike racer, you race a lot of Criteriums, but the Silver City crit is super unique. That downhill turn, the high curbs, it puts a little bit more pressure on the corners, but it really is a unique crit in the United States.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, the downtown is a historic downtown, and what that means too is there's a lot of cool buildings, but at the same time, a lot of the roads are pretty rough as well. And so you have some really fast sort of downhill corners that you carry a lot of speed with, and it's impressive watching Lauren win in that crit too, because it's a very fast finish, and it's also it's not necessarily a true sprint course, because it's there's some hills in it as well, and it's a really fast finish. So she definitely had the leg speed, and that's an impressive win to watch, Lauren.
Thanks, Garrett. I think I also had a little bit of crazy bone still in my brain, because that last corner is so fast. And I remember the end of my career, I was third to Chloe Dygart and Emma White. And I was very, very happy with that result, because we were just screaming down that hill into that left-hand last corner. And then it just spits you out as close to those barriers almost. And, you're just riding that fine line of don't touch the barriers with your bars, or it's all she wrote. So, yeah, that's quite the hair-raising finish for that crit.
Definitely, and I know that some of my teammates in the past would even, change their gear ratios a little bit just so they could have a little extra gearing for that super, super fast finish at the end.
Okay, that's new to me. I always knew that the time trialist would have a bigger chain ring for the time trial, but that's the first I've heard of changing gearing for the crit. But that's cool. I love those little details.
Yeah, exactly, and I don't recall it ever working, but sometimes just a little bit a little bit can make a difference.
You never know.
They used to say it's only crazy if it doesn't work, so you got to try.
Exactly.
By the way, you can come race Tour the Gila. Even if you're not a UCI professional, they do have amateur races as well throughout the week, and they're running a special discount this week. It runs through next Sunday. If you enter coupon code GILA 2020 at registration, you can get 10% off of your registration for the amateur races at Tour de Gila. They're also adding, which we are very excited about, a women's 1, 2, 3 category. So non-UCI female riders will be able to compete without having to get a UCI license or be part of a UCI team. So that runs through next week. Again, you can register at the Tour de Gila website through Bike Reg. We'd love to see you there, April 27th to May 1st. I know I'll be there, Lauren will be there, and Garrett's going to be there as well. So you can come hang out with all of us.
I think that's a great opportunity for new racers, new riders coming up, because Tour of the Gila, like Garrett said, it's such a unique race because you're at altitude. It's affordable to get there. It's beautiful scenery, and it's just such a dynamic stage race. And I think, I look forward to going back for sure. It's just a beautiful weekend.
Yeah, and very cool opportunity here on RGT to be able to pre-ride these courses, get a look at it. Good rail. All right, so a little look from up above. A small break moving off the front here. It looks like just one rider alone. I'm going to go ahead and say this rider probably going to get brought back solo. But, Lauren, we see this a lot, the early attacks. It's just trying to get something started. It's like playing poker. You're waiting for the right hand to be dealt here.
Yeah, exactly. Just testing your legs, testing the group, and see. Sometimes if you draw out a couple of riders, you can kind of get a game plan really quick on what people are going to try and do for the day. I don't think there's any secret about how this race is going to be played out from all the different teams, but you just never know. And so you kind of like throw a hand out there or throw a card out there and just see what others, if they're going to react or not. So yeah, never hurts to try. Well, it probably hurts.
This is Charlie Revel for Team Tour 2000. Yeah, I'm going to guess it does hurt to try here, to try and go solo off the front of a group like this. Revel may be trying to set up a Team Tour 2000 teammate. Garrett, we talked about some of the tactics that non-climbers can use to try to help their teammates. There's no water mules on RGT. You're not going back to the car to bring anything back to the team. So in terms of race tactics, is there anything else you can do besides just trying to ride hard on the front or trying to get a break going?
Yeah, the different platforms are a little different. So I think here you're trying to conserve as much energy to stay with the group, right? And you're marking any dangerous moves, but otherwise you're just trying to save as much energy, especially this stage, until that last climb at the end, because you're gonna have to put out a lot of power to finish in the top up that last climb. So basically, conserve energy until that last climb. And it's easier said than done too, because sometimes there's surges in the race, etc., that you got to go with, etc. So you're trying to do as best as you can to conserve any energy you have for that last climb, and then see how it shakes out from there.
Well, here is the Team Tour 2000 roster. Beak ride in the time trial. We 7 up on this group, and then Oliver Hutchings, Mike Lister in there as well, and then Ben Thomas, who I think is man for climb today. I think he's a target. So maybe Revel looking at a stage win, Thomas looking at the overall, but I think this is more of a setup for Charlie Revel here today, trying to work for Ben Thomas.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's exactly what that is, and just kind of take any pressure off of Ben as possible, and put all the pressure on Kevin Bouchard Hall and his team.
Good look at Zach Nair here, Project Echelon rider. Showing off his Stars and Stripes jersey.
Is it me, or does he look like the guy from Night at the Roxbury? Is it Night at the Roxbury? No, it's Zoolander.
Zoolander?
Yes.
Yeah, I can kind of see. With the headband a little bit. Yeah. That's
And
a compliment.
he sort of-
For the head. Yeah.
He sort of has the blue steel look going on as well.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's
blue,
it.
blue
Yeah,
colorway
yeah.
and everything. It's bringing out the
Thanks, Garrett.
color in his eyes.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fun seeing everyone's different setups and pain caves around in our SIS Zoom camera throughout the season. Some riders have really invested in this. Some riders to be in a concrete no man's land wherever they're riding from, but whatever works for you.
It's fun to see all the different, pain caves or wherever they can probably set up their computer and training station. We see them in the kitchen. We see them out on the back porch. We see them in their very much pain cave that they've set up specifically for this. So, however you can get the work and training in, huh?
Yeah, definitely. And I
actually go ahead, Dick.
Be kind of interested in, some of the setups, right? Because from a physiological perspective, we're looking at things like, how they can manage their heat, their hydration, their nutrition, and all their kind of setups sort of plays a role on that. And I feel in these virtual platforms, you have a little bit more variability in what people do versus the actual kind of race setting. So I think that's always kind of an interesting aspect, whether you're having big fans, you're turning the thermostat down, etc. Because manage your heat is kind of an important part of these races.
Yeah,
it's a
we've
big part of the
definitely
art
seen a lot of that.
Desert racing. Yeah.
We've seen all the setups, and yesterday, Brad and I were even discussing the lighting system, and I'm sure there'll be studies on this at some point of how you can maximize an effort based on the lighting system, because you already know that music is a stimulating factor, and having the fan like you're talking about and the cool down factor, and your hydration is extremely important. And a lot of times you'll just see them having their bottles not in their bottle cages, just sitting right on the desk, just easy access. And just every little bit of those 1%ers make a huge difference in the virtual world.
So Garrett, if you want to invest in providing art up, it's got art light.
Sounds good.
All right, Charlie Revel sitting on the front here, still with about 100-meter gap back to Hammonds and Hutchings. So this one actually held on longer than I thought. No disrespect to Charlie, who is one of the strongest riders in Season 1 of the Echelon Racing League. But to be stuck out there all by yourself, Lauren, this is not a fun place, not a fun scenario. See who takes up the charge to bring him back. You see Lister, Clace, Bouchard, Hall back there. Here comes Eric Hill, working his way up to the front. Eric from the Project Echelon team. It looks like he's got the new Project Echelon kit on as well. Project Echelon just recently launching their 2022 style, working again with Stice Design, with the design inspired by water, which is significant because it represents an immense power and force that can change the landscape. At the same time, water has a rhythmic and calming effect that allows us to reflect. At Project Echelon, we believe physical activity has the same power and impact. Project Echelon's mission to educate, empower, and equip through physical activity. So I think that's a very cool story with the design. Stice always does a great job, and Project Echelon, I love that they always have a story behind their jerseys. Last year, it was the sunrise jersey you see hanging on the wall behind Eric, a reminder of the veteran suicide epidemic here in the country, and reminding that the sun will always rise the next day. And this year, water, the theme. I love it.
That's great. Yeah, I guess I was not aware of the water theme background and information. I'm just even more excited to have the kit. I think it's in my mailbox when I go home. So I'll wear that very proudly for many reasons. But yeah, good insight.
Garrett, did you ever have a favorite team jersey in your career? What was your favorite kit, or the one that you were maybe least embarrassed to be seen in public in?
I'd probably say anyone that's willing to give me a kit. No, but actually, the one that I'm actually most proud of is just recently at the Western New Mexico University where I work. We just professor of exercise science, but as a little side project, we started a cycling club, and so I worked with the marketing department, and we got a nice design together, and we got our jerseys. So hopefully, when you come down to tour the Gila or see that, in the spring, you might be able to see a couple of those jerseys cruising around. And I think they're really, really sharp because I actually had a role in helping them, getting them from start to finish. So I think that's probably the one I'm most proud of.
Very cool. That's got to be cool, seeing that in person the first time, seeing that out on the roads of Silver City. Nice. All right, here is Eric Hill from the Project Echelon team starting to move back a little bit. We have access to the Discord channel that Project Echelon uses to communicate with their team. I'm going to see if we can listen in here for a little bit with Project Echelon, see what they're talking about. This is always tough because there's not always communication in the group. We'll leave this up for a little bit and see if these guys mention anything. Here's Eric Hill going off the front. Maybe this will spark some conversation on the team Discord.
Yeah. Like all of a sudden, you're just like front off the back. You're like, okay.
Sounds like maybe getting frustrated, trying to get away here, trying to get something started.
Well, if you look at the course profile, they had that hill that you saw everybody go into the red. And then when they crest the hill, it kind of like turns this switch in your brain of like, oh, are we going to start attacking now? And so everybody's kind of like doing these little hitters right now and kind of like, are we going to settle back in? And I think that's where Eric is right now, is like, all right, hey, let's just settle back down. I got a little off the back.
It says I'm saving 1,200 watts right now. Nice.
They're talking about their wattage.
Who's that 1,200 watts?
No one. He was
I wish
saving
I
it.
could like
Save up that energy later. Go up the climb with 1,200 watts.
lunch. Still get beat by some random dude in Europe.
Yeah.
Ben Thomas isn't random.
That dude last week who was at 230 pounds and just smacked us with like 1,300 watts for a minute.
Yeah, Roka.
Oh, yeah.
It's like 3 watts per kilo.
That's great.
Hey, that's virtual racing. These are all verified results, by the way, in the Echelon Racing League. They just updated their verification last week. There was this. There's a long weigh-in process where the riders have to prove their weight, and then there's also a power meter verification process that they go through where you have to document that the meter is calibrated. You have to do multiple tests to confirm that, and then they have a dual rule as well. So you have to have 2 separate power sources to make sure that those aren't being edited. So the early days of virtual racing, it was the wild, wild west out there. You really couldn't trust any performance. People were very sort of skeptical about a lot of performances in the early days of virtual racing. But now they've developed very strict protocols, and they've established a pretty good system of weeding out any suspect performances. So we're pretty confident about performances in the Echelon Racing League.
And it just keeps everything honest and knowing that it's very clear and concise on your effort versus these, everybody else racing around the world. And that Ben Thomas is not just a random European guy.
Ben Thomas was a pro mountain biker, by the way. So, Well, maybe random to RGT or random to the Echelon Racing League, although Thomas was with us in Season 1. Not one of the aggressive guys in the race, though. Thomas is a guy that'll just sit back, and you don't really see him much on the front until the finish. But all you have to do is look at the GC to see that Ben Thomas is a hitter, sitting 5th overall. Just look at Travis Samuel, the Above and Beyond Cancer, presented by Bike World Rider. Going with the no-kit option, and I think he's got some KT tape up there as well, some of that kinesiology tape. Garrett, when you're riding on the trainer here, this can really exacerbate a lot of injuries. As we talk about sort of preparing for the upcoming season. It's sort of a different style of riding on the trainer. Trying to train, like this, you can really try and focus on your fit in the way that you're riding. So a good opportunity to get those, base miles in. Maybe work out any kinks on a new bike or a new setup before you get out and start doing the big miles outside.
Yeah, I do know that training on a trainer is got to be one of the hardest things there is to do, whether you're trying to watch shows or whatnot. And I think this new types of online racing platforms like RGT, etc., are really good. They help with that training for people that live in colder climates. I know myself, I'd spend a lot of time. I did do the trainer a little bit, but I'd put on my big burly boots on, my gloves. I grew up in Wisconsin, and I'd get out there and try to ride, but sometimes you just can't. And so I feel these racing leagues definitely help the motivation so that these people can get in some base fitness and some miles. And it's actually, I would say, a little more than base fitness. They're pretty fit. If you definitely watch the wattages up in the corner of your screen, there's huge spikes in wattages. So you have these massive changes from going pretty easy to going really hard, and that's pretty impressive, and that takes a lot of fitness to do over and over throughout the day.
Yeah, it takes the right kind of fitness to do well on virtual racing. Here's Charlie Revel coming off the back of the group. Remember, we saw Charlie attacking on the front earlier, seeing if he could draw anyone out. Nobody went with him, so not sure if he pulled the plug or just went a little too deep here. He is in the red zone trying to chase back on, so that tells me that he does not want to be here. So it looks like he may have lost contact. Meanwhile, Will Harden taking a little look off the front here for Project Echelon, putting in a big effort here for Harden. Get him a little bit of space. But, Lauren, they're still not even close to the heavy part of the race here. I was listening to Eric Hill and some of the Project Echelon guys, how heavily they were breathing. And I was like, we're only 21 minutes into this thing when we were listening to them. But virtual racing, I mean, you get started from the gun.
Yeah, exactly. And seeing Revel go off the back like that, I think that is a testament to how hard virtual racing is, and just the consistency of riding the trainer, and how unforgiving it is to spend that energy out front, and to, even listening to Eric try and get back on into the draft. It's extremely hard. So yeah, we're just now touching the meat of this day. So with so much heavy riding to come, you have to monitor your efforts, and maybe that was Revel's job done, and first guy out the back. And is there a time cut today? Probably not. So he can just ride it in and try and recover as much as possible for tomorrow.
Yeah, with no time cut, Garrett, you can enjoy the ride on the way up to the line. That was always something that we had to worry about in the stage races. The stage race rules do apply in the Echelon Racing League, so the riders have to finish today. But, I don't think they're going to time cut anyone today, so they should be fine. That might be a big advantage. Take a day off. Don't go too deep today. Try and save it all for Sunday's Gila Monster stage.
Yeah, there's a fine line, though, right? Like, a lot of times, if you're not being able to compete today, it's kind of hard tomorrow, because tomorrow is even a tougher stage with more climbing, etc. But if you're not having a great day at the base of the climb and you can ride it in, it may be a little bit more beneficial. But typically, you see the people who will do well today are going to also do well tomorrow.
Well, this group going to get smaller and smaller on the front. Still nobody going with Travis Samuel here, the solo rider on the left side of your screen. And he's only up to about 70 meters up the road right now. Back to Bickley, Thomas, Usborne. You need about 200 to call it a major split. So we'll see if Samuel gets any more space. But what a stacked team this is. The Above Beyond Cancer Squad. Timmy Power, Brad Bickley, Travis Samuel, Grant Simons. These are all names that we talk about in the Echelon Racing League because these guys are aggressive on the front. They like to take breaks. They like to make splits. They like to try and get things going. We saw Hayden Warner off the front earlier. Obviously, Matt Usborne with a good result yesterday. But, yeah, one of the more aggressive and more organized teams in the Echelon Racing League. We got a lot of cards to play today, Lauren.
And podium placers, that we've seen a lot of those guys out there in the front, like you said, making the race, taking the race, and making the race, and ended up on the podium. So you can't just let these guys roll up the road thinking that, he's just going to come back. Any of these guys. But I do wonder, what we've seen in the past is we need a significant group of people to go up the road. Otherwise, these guys are only able to get maybe 100 meters up the road, and then they're kind of getting caught. But what we've seen in the past is 5-6 riders with a significant break, and even that has been getting caught. So you kind of wonder if this is, worth the effort, but you got to try.
Yeah, especially if you're not a great climber, if you don't think that you can climb with the best of them, maybe try and make your move early, like Jaden Yeager here, trying to take a little look off the front. Lister, Shane going to go with him. Jaden Yeager, probably one of the top time trials in this field. I was a little surprised that he got beat yesterday just because of his pedigree. I thought that early fast time that he set would be enough to do it. We were asking why Jaden Yeager was decided to ride in the early segment. He answered in our Facebook chat yesterday. He said, so I could drink beer and watch the broadcast in the evening one. So that makes sense.
There you go.
Jaden's a smart guy.
Recovery at its best, and we were talking about that the Friday night recovery. If it is conducive to ride in the morning, and he answered our question.
So you kick back and have a drink, and I think he was playing cribbage as he was watching, believe it or not. So nice to know we've got a viewer in Jaden Yeager. It looks like Yeager's about to close this gap down. He is about to get up to Travis Samuel here, and he's going to bring the entire party with him.
Hitting that
I'll tell you,
down slope right
sweaty,
there, taking that to advantage.
As sweaty as the other guys look, Jaden Yeager looks really good. We saw Zach Nair's flex with one national champion's jersey, and then Jaden Yeager says, watch this, hold my beer.
Well, they don't give those jerseys away, that's for sure. You have to earn those stars and stripes.
Group's starting to calm down a little bit. See more of a group formation across the road, the group dynamics in RGT. But yeah, there's a lot of riders in this field that are just watching this saying, all right, let's get this party started. I'm ready. Here goes Jaden Yeager taking another little look off the front. But for a rider we'll talk about our women's race coming up here, but Jackie Gabi and Julia Escalou, they're basically just waiting until they get to the bottom of that climb, Lauren. I mean, we've seen that in the real-life Gila races as well. When you have a GC battle that starts to form, it's really just a matter of waiting until those GC riders get a chance to match up. And climb is what's going to do that today.
Yeah, I mean, like we saw earlier in the part of this profile, there was a little kicker, and I think that just kind of makes everybody slightly nervous. But yeah, they've all settled back in, and the ones and twos are trying to go off the front and put pressure on Kevin Bouchard Hall. But in the back of your mind, almost everyone knows it's going to come down to the last climb and that last effort. As you can see, the profile, it's all red. So you're trying to save as much as possible. We've got a couple of kickers leading up to that, but that last bit is just sitting in the back of your mind. And so save as much as possible for that.
There's still about 22 riders, I think, in this group. As we take a look at Valentine Slay, the Beast Mode presented by Rose Team, one of the teammates of Julia Scalou. Rose is a bike shop. I looked into a little bit of the Beast Mode presented by Rose Team. I think they have a very cool vibe. I like their kit. I like what they got going on with the virtual racing. One of the teams that has really adopted the world of virtual racing and built virtual specific programs, which we're starting to see more and more of. We have teams that race in real life, like Tour of the Gila or Project Echelon. Sorry, that's a team that'll be racing at Tour of the Gila in person, above beyond cancer. We see those guys out on the road a lot. And then you have virtual specific teams starting to emerge as well. So it's cool to see those changes happening in the cycling world.
I think it's great to have this. This is a whole other opportunity to get your brand out there, and maybe you don't have time to travel or the finances to travel, or you've got family or other commitments. And this is a way that you can still get racing and get yourself out there and get those endorphins going and challenging yourself and your friends and your teammates. So I love the virtual world, and that this is a whole new way of bike racing.
Julia Scalou, great example of a rider who has said, hey, I'm all in on virtual racing. Her plan is to be the best virtual racer in the world, and it's not a stepping stone to try to go into the world tour. It's not a stepping stone to try to get a continental ride. She wants to be the best virtual racer that she can be, and I think that's cool. I think it's cool to see that dedication into virtual racing. #1 ranked Zwift rider in the world, and now trying to make her impact here on RGT, although Jackie Godby's been standing in her way, so she'll have a lot to prove when we get to our pro women's race here in 26 miles from now. 26K from now, sorry.
We've had some really
Guys
good battles these couple of weeks, haven't we? I mean, between Jaeger and Kevin Bouchard-Hall, and then Scalou and Godby. I mean, it's just good racing.
It's been interesting to see sort of rivalries start to develop. There are these groups of riders that seem to battle week after week after week. And Garrett, I know you saw some of it last year. A name like Matt Usborne. I mean, that's a guy who is constantly hunting in the Echelon Racing League. I mean, he always wants to at least be in the mix. And so a guy like that really made his impact on Season 1. It's good to have him back in Season 2.
Yeah, definitely. And some of these names you hear, they're up there every day. And then you hear some of the names, just from being around cycling, like Kevin Bouchard-Hall and whatnot. So a lot of these names are familiar not only in the virtual setting, but then there's also your handful that are familiar from the actual, normal type of racing setting. So it's a great mix of people that you see out there competing in events like today.
All right, helicopters fueled up again, flying over top of our group. One of the really cool things about RGT, I was talking about the group formation earlier, the dynamics that go into where they place riders in the group. A lot of riders comment on the realism of that, the way that the groups sort of form. Like when you see a surge, it kind of opens up this lane up the left side. Now you'll see it sort of form up the right side. They put a lot into those realistic dynamics because the drafting really matters in RGT. And so being able to figure out sort of how to use that to your advantage is a big part of doing well on this platform. All about efficiency. It's never been highlighted more, the importance of having an efficient ride than with platforms like this on RGT and Zwift, Lauren. Usborne back to suffering.
I really hope he gets on the podium today, because I would love to have another interview from him.
We're definitely interviewing him. Garrett, you weren't with us yesterday, but Matt Usborne came to his interview wearing the giant Pit Viper sunglasses and then proceeded to describe his time trial as like getting an enema from a dump truck. So that gives you a good idea of Matt Usborne's spirited post-race press conference yesterday.
Yeah. We'll see how he describes today.
Yeah, I think today is going to be even more painful. If yesterday was rough. Just you wait, Mr. Usborne. We'll get back to you in about 45 minutes from now. Check in and you have another. I mean, this is a rider who's not afraid of getting put in the pain box. Garrett, we were talking yesterday about people that could either do the trainer or not. Even before the virtual racing, I'm positive that there is some sort of gene embedded inside of athletes where you either have the ability to ride the trainer or you don't. Because even before the advent of these virtual platforms, you could either like do 3 hours on the trainer or you could do a max of like 45 minutes before you had to get out of it. You were in that camp. You were an outside bike rider through and through.
Yeah, I don't know. I struggled. You tried rollers to all these different trainers and just couldn't do it. I'd put on 10 layers and go outside and, and put like hand warmers in my feet because your feet would freeze, that sort of thing. But I had teammates like Carl Menzies, for example, who lived in Michigan. He would just spend hours on the trainer. Or, when we lived together in Colorado, he would do the same thing, just spend time on the trainer. So everyone has what works for them, and I think the key is just keeping it mentally fresh and being able to do that. Looks like Matt Usborne's having a little problem.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so this is almost definitely a technical here for Usborne, having a dropout here. Yeah, he's on the computer trying to get back in. And he's back connected. Looks like he's getting power back to the avatar, but may have just lost connection with either the trainer or the game there briefly, and it only takes a few seconds. There is no car to pace you back on RGT. Lauren, normally this is where you would maybe tuck behind a team car or a mechanic's car as the commissars look the other way, but we haven't gotten that into RGT yet.
This is quite the blow for the team. I mean, he's a big addition and big force for the team, and so him being off the back, that is a huge loss for them.
As someone with sketchy internet myself, I really can't fault him for whatever the technological issues that may be plaguing him here, but that's certainly a bummer to see a rider like Usborne going off the back here. Technical in virtual racing, it happens.
It'll be interesting to see if he just decides to sort of shut it down for the day and ride in and save for tomorrow, or if he tries to catch back on. But I think that is a pretty long shot.
And
something tells
Garrett,
me
like
that this is
you're
the
saying,
kind of guy who still gets his workout in. I mean, he's still going to want to I'm still supposed to do an hour effort today.
Yeah, you still got to get up the hill. Like you said, Brad, you have to finish the day. So it's not an easy finish. It's not just like a downhill coast. He's still going to have to put out somewhat of an effort to finish out today. Poor guy.
Well, bad luck strikes every form of bike racing. I guess this would be very similar to a flat tire or broken chain or broken spoke, whatever freak mechanical you have out on the road. We've all been there. What are the chances that your rear cassette completely falls apart on you?
Yeah.
Whatever the issue is. Usborne's going to go for it. He wants to get back in here. This guy's not throwing the towel in, that's for sure.
And as you mentioned, the hard part about the virtual platform is there are no team cards to pace you back or sticky bottles to grab or things like that to get back in the group. Once there's some sort of malfunction, basically the internet goes down. Your day is kind of over from a competition standpoint. You can still ride hard and whatnot, but it's hard to get back in there and compete for the day.
Looks like that might be a trainer issue. Still trying to get that figured out. Well, we wish best of luck for Mr. Usborne. Hopefully he can get that fixed up, at least for tomorrow. But my biggest concern now is just hoping that he can finish, because I really want to see him on the start line for the Gila Monster Day coming up. So bad luck for Matt today, but had a good ride yesterday, so hopefully he can recover for Sunday's race.
Agreed. And did he drop out again just then? Or yeah, man, he's having some heck of a day, but we haven't seen the last of him.
All right, I didn't see Usborne talking much, but it sounds like we do have access to their Discord as well. Let's see if they're talking about anything.
Oh, well. These things happen.
I heard these things happen.
If you guys could do me a favor and not attack for the next little while, see if I can close down this 800 meters. Roger, Roger. Sweet!
Who's born to close that
All
gap?
right, well, there you go.
That's what she said.
Oh,
All right, Thorne is going to try and close down the gap here. He is asking the team to not attack up at the front, and he thinks he can make this 800 meters back. So we'll keep an eye on Matt Usborne here trying to do the impossible. And look at this, Travis Samuel doing a little blocking up in the front of the virtual field here.
Oh man, I love Discord. That's definitely the true insight of the Peloton. I mean, these guys are going after it. Their blood pressure's up, their adrenaline's going, and you kind of hear a little off the cuff comments. But that's bike racing, isn't it? That's yeah. We'll see if he can make it back. And the honest truth of, hey, you guys don't let anything get up the road, and try not to attack, please.
Garrett, sometimes this is the best story of the day. The riders that are just trying to fight back, or the riders trying to make the time cut. That was always a favorite of mine in the long climbing days, watching the Gruppetto try and make sure that they make it in. Sometimes the sprinters suffer on climbing days. So today I think it's just about Matt Usborne trying to get back in there. Very cool.
Yeah, and everyone has their own race, right? You know, you're working for a general team goal, but at the end of the day, everyone has to compete the race, and you try to do your objective, but then you also have to finish as well. And now I wouldn't be surprised if Usborne, if he were to catch on, if he were just to attack and try to go right through the group. A lot of times people do that, and because you spent a lot of matches, and why not give it a shot once you catch back on?
In between the back of the field and Matt Usborne, so maybe can ride with Lister for a little bit, use that as a slingshot for the last little bridge up to the field. I think Usborne will probably make contact with Lister here, and then they're both smart enough, and these guys are pretty experienced on RGT as well, that I think they can probably work together to try and get themselves up there, but that's only if Lister can hold on. We'll see if Usborne waits up at all or just goes right by him. Question answered.
Yep. And you wonder if there's ever any kind of gentleman's agreement because of it looked like he had an internet dropout or whatever it is, right? That he's in for the GC standings, and those guys know that. And I'm really curious if there is any kind of conversation or any kind of wait up for Usborne.
Yeah, it would be tough to get the entire field organized, but he did send some teammates up to the front. We saw Travis Samuel earlier, so uh-oh, another dropout here.
Gosh. Huh. Oh, man. Tell everybody inside to stop streaming.
Yeah, there's a number of places that that this system can break down in virtual racing. One, you need your connection to the internet. That's your outward-facing connection. But then there's these other pairings that have to happen. You have to pair your power meter with the game. You have to pair your screen. When it was a two-app system, that had to be dialed in. And so there's a lot of places that it can go wrong in this modern world of technology.
And that's the thing, like he's making time back, and then it drops out, and he goes back to 800 meters. He has to start over.
Well, remember, this was his ride yesterday, a 37:34 to Kevin Bouchard Hall's 37:10. So if there's a guy that could do a half-hour effort to try to do the impossible and come back into the group, it would be Matt Usborne, but not with the continued dropouts that seem to be plaguing Usborne today. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a weather issue in Canada, or it could just be the local internet. You know, sometimes there's a tech in the neighborhood that's plugging and unplugging wires. A lot of things can go wrong on the internet.
Yeah, and Ben Thomas and Jordan Yeager are looking at this as like, all right, sweet, this is my opportunity to move up in GC today, or potentially move up, hopefully, with the climb. But and hopefully, the next guy sitting in the standings for his team is Bickley. So, there is someone there to kind of make up for his loss, unfortunately, for today, and try and cover and represent. So we'll see if I don't think Usborne's going to make it back, but there's advantageous for some and not so advantageous for others.
Well, I think that's going to be it for Matt Usborne today. The tech issues will prove to be too much for the Above and Beyond Cancer rider as we go up to the front of the field where Matt Zimmer is taking a look for Project Echelon here. Zimmer gives himself
he had a pretty good ride
40 meters
yesterday. Yep. Yeah, he was in the top 10, top 8 overall, and kind of set himself and the Project Echelon team up pretty well by going off the front here and giving it a go.
Coming up on 13K of racing to go. They went over the small climb. Go ahead, Garrett.
I was just saying, not a bad place to attack, sort of getting closer to the base of the climb, and maybe you can have a little gap going into the climb, and if he's not the best climber, can sort of save a little energy so that, get a little head start on the climb and see what happens.
Right, you can get into that climb and kind of go your pace and hopefully get into a rhythm. And by that point, the climbers catch you and you can just hang on for dear life those last couple of K. I totally understand those feelings.
Look at the difference in power here on the left side of the screen. You can see Zimmer up at the front doing somewhere between 5 and 6 average watts per kilo, and then everyone in the field is holding steady at like 4.5, 5. They're now starting to generally move up in the group, I think, because they're hitting a little bit more of an incline. But you can see the notably larger effort for Zimmer on the front than the guys in the field. Right now, you're seeing a lot of 2 and 3 average watts per kilo. But what's Zimmer doing? 4s and 5s. So Zimmer's staying on the gas up here on the front, and it's building his lead. He's gone up over 100 meters now. It was 40 meters last time we checked in, so doubled his lead in the last 30 seconds or so. It looks like the field might be starting to panic a little bit. Shape starting to change. Remember earlier, they were in a very organized group, let's say. But now you're starting to see riders splitting up, starting to see more gaps forming. I think we're starting to see the cracks in the foundation here, Lauren.
Brad, just like Garrett said, you kind of sniff the finish line now. When you're under 15K to go, 20K to go, you can kind of tell that it's coming up. And so, these start to get a little bit more anxious. It was like at the beginning of the race when you're kind of anxious and you go over that first climb and you haven't settled in yet. And now here we are towards the end of the race. And again, everybody gets anxious again. So we only had like 10 or 15 minutes of just chill. And even that wasn't really chilling, right? Because we saw Usborne check out and all that kind of fall to pieces. So this is the beauty of racing, is every minute it changes and the race can change and play out in so many different ways.
And to add on to what Lauren said, what also makes them even a little more anxious, I think, is that the finish is a climb, right? So that gets people a little more excited going into these final, 10 kilometers.
It's easy to get ahead of yourself, get excited for that climb, and try and lift things a little early. Take a look at Kevin Bouchard Hall here, another GC favorite here in the Echelon Racing League, one of the guys that has a lot to gain from the Matt Usborne technical today. But I know this is another guy who would have much rather had Matt Usborne in the race. He would much rather see this play out into some good competition in a virtual racing. Nobody wants to see a competitor out of the race for a technical, but Kevin Bouchard-Hall, I think, going to be one to watch on this final climb today, Lauren.
I agree. I think he's just kind of buying his time right now, hopefully, and having teammates around him and just trying to stay as calm as he can, because the end of this race is his race. That's what he excels in.
Zimmer, gap coming down. Davenport working his way up. But I think this one probably coming back, as Zimmer will be joined by the Team Tour 2000 rider. So nice to have a little bit of company. Might be too little too late here for the Matt Zimmer party. Davenport definitely wants to work with Zimmer. You see the way he lets up as soon as he gets up to Zimmer. It's like, hey, I'm here as a friend. I'm here to cooperate. I'm here to work together. One of the sort of nonverbal ways you can communicate in the game.
Yeah, you sure hope so. And definitely Zimmer's been wanting somebody up there for the last couple of kilometers so, to have a compatriot up there. And let's try and get another separation. But looks like Zimmer is probably going to ride a little bit harder than what is asked of his compatriot. But yeah, that's bike racing.
So now even Davenport having a little gap open up to Zimmer. It's really tough to do what Davenport is trying to do here to ride with Zimmer. Lauren, you talked about this yesterday, how hard it is to hold power at a set number. It's an acquired skill in bike racing.
No doubt, especially on the trainer when you see your avatar connected, and you would like for your trainer just to ease up a little bit. But it really doesn't, right? Because we're going to now start getting into this climb a little bit more. We're coming up to the first little kicker, and Davenport had done that effort to get across to Zimmer, and Zimmer's not letting off the gas one bit. And you just wanted to be able to put your hand up and be like, dude, just give me a second, please. But yeah, it's virtual racing at its hardest right now.
When you get up into a break, normally there's a little bit of conversation, and you get like a little bit of time to recover. There's an agreement in general in the pro peloton, but you get once you overstay that window, you're expected to start pulling your weight in the breakaway. It's tougher when you can't directly communicate, right? When you don't have a guy yelling in your face right next to you to do work and take pulls in the breakaway. It's probably easier to skip those in the virtual world, but there is an expectation that Davenport at some point is going to have to get in front of Zimmer here and start doing some work.
Yeah, you have a little bit of time, once you catch back on to catch your breath, but then you got to start, pulling as well. And this is where team tactics come into play a little bit also. So we'll sort of see what happens. And I always find it interesting. Sometimes coming into the base of these climbs, like we're starting to get into, sometimes the hardest part is actually going into the base of the climb, and then things will settle down once you start going up the climb for a little bit, as people try to position themselves, etc.
Well, don't forget, you can join us in the Echelon Racing League. If you're not racing as a pro, we host community league events every week. It's free to race, and RGT is free to ride on as well. You can register at echelonracingleague.com. A lot of these riders use the opportunity to check out the course the week before, so it's also a cool opportunity to ride with some of these guys. If you've been watching them on the live stream, you want to test yourself against some of our pro men and pro women in the Echelon Racing League. You can do it in the community league events, open to everybody at echelonracingleague.com.
Yeah, I wonder, when Iron Horse happened, Kevin Bouchard Hall said that he had previewed the course the week before with the Community Race League. So I'm curious if he has done the same with Tour of the Gila or at least this course, just to kind of get an idea, or even tomorrow, just to kind of set himself up best as possible for today.
Jackie Godby said the same thing about previewing the time trial course. She rode yesterday's time trial course in the community league race the week before just to kind of see how it raced, and she said she was extremely glad that she did that when she got out into the competition yesterday. So, yeah, it's a good opportunity for both the pros and the amateurs to ride some of these very cool courses. Jaden Yeager trying to tack things back. Looks like he'll shut this one down.
Brad, I think you'll start to see some splits here on this first little kicker, and I wonder if this will just go to the line now, if you'll just start seeing ones and twos all the way to the finish. You have 7K left.
Yeah, this first little climb's a steep little climb. Then you sort of level off, and you're in your big sort of open plateau, and then there's the final climb to the finish, which is steep. And there's some switchbacks, etc., but it's almost a little more steady. This first one's pretty steep.
Garrett, you remember like when it's wide open and you kind of like you take the right, you go over the cattle guard, you hit that first climb, you're on the mesa, and then all of a sudden it's just crosswinds, and like it was always the race to be in the best position possible for your climber and set them up as best possible, knowing those crosswinds were coming. And I just remember that being ultimately the hardest part of the day for me. Not the climb, not the turn, not the run in, not the start, none of that. It was always the crosswind section, because that was like for us and for a domestique, for my climber, that was the spot. We had to get them to the base of the climb as fresh as possible, as calm as possible, because we all know climbers aren't most comfortable in a peloton, especially when it starts to get echeloned into the gutter. And thank goodness we don't have crosswinds here in RGT, but I definitely remember that.
Yeah, exactly. And you had to make it over this first little climb and you'd be, pretty much red line, and then you'd have to help them across this long, like you mentioned, pretty strong crosswind open mesa. And then once you got to the bulk of the climb, it was kind of good. You could sit up and let your climbers do the work. And for most of the day, especially on this stage, you'd have a pretty significant wind sometimes, and that's sort of the beauty of the Gila as well, right? There's climbing involved, but at the same time, especially the race when it's held in the spring, it's usually our windy time of year, and crosswinds and being able to handle your bike plays a pretty big role, and team tactics come into play as well.
Yeah, even on that descent yesterday in the time trial, Lauren, the descending on a time trial bike coming up on 50 miles an hour is not an easy thing to do. You got to be a good bike handler as well. If you're going to go fast, you got to be able to handle the speed.
No doubt. We were talking about that as you essentially get blown from, because it was a double yellow line rule there, because they would have to have the road closed specifically for traffic, like Jack was saying. But you would get blown from the double yellow line all the way over the white line into the shoulder, and then you would basically try and fight your way all the way back. It was very, very dangerous.
And then typically, right, you have full disc rear, you have, partial disc on the front. So the wind can definitely, send you a pretty far distance.
Right, those bikes are so stiff. It's a whole different position. You have no braking power at your fingertips like you do on your road bike. It is definitely a time trialist race that never suited me, but that's fine because you have somebody like Chloe Dygart, Kristen Armstrong. It was just beautiful to watch what they could do on the bike.
And same thing back in the day, I had teammate Tom Zerbel, big dude, great time trialist, and he could the wind didn't quite affect him as much compared to some of the smaller folks.
There's Jordan Shane taking a little look off the front. Meanwhile, first group has gotten split off the back. This looks like Jaakko Silenkorva trying to bring this group back. He's got Hauser and Hill with him for X Speed United. The Finnish rider for Jaakko here. I wonder what time it is in Finland right now.
Past my bedtime.
I'll tell you, because I have Google. It's only 7:15 p.m. He's good.
Oh, okay.
It's
okay.
dinner time.
Maybe past my bedtime. Well,
look how small this group has gotten. I think we are down to 11 riders, maybe, in this group.
yeah, it's definitely been splitting up over that climb. Hey, and Zimmer back at the front, like he's having a good day right now.
Yeah, this is about to heat up. This is a powder keg right now. See how these guys start to string out single file now? They're starting to pick it up at the front, and they're just about to come onto the red portion. The very bottom right of the screen, you can see the elevation profile that goes across the entire screen, and they're about to hit the base of that big climb. So once they get into that red section, this will not be a group of 11 or 12 riders anymore. This will very quickly go down, I think, to ones and twos out there.
Kevin's definitely got quite the team still in that front group too. That's a good representation and definitely game plan for those guys.
There's also an element of the sort of standoff situation here, Garrett, waiting for the first move to come, waiting for the first rider to go, the first big attack to come. You're kind of waiting for that rider to jump out of the saddle and go. You know it's coming. It's just a matter of time.
Exactly, and sometimes if you're really confident, you're the individual that might want to, jump first, but a lot of times you sort of wait for someone to go and then follow their wheel and keep going after that. So we'll see what happens, and I feel something coming pretty shortly here as we get onto the second part and the main part of this climb.
Well, I think these guys have just hit the base of the climb because I'm watching everyone's power going red here.
Yeah.
So I think it's starting to go uphill as you see Shane on a 8% gradient on the way up here for Jordan. Kevin Bouchard Hall going to be able to follow it. But now you start looking over here, 5, 6, 7 watts per kilo. These are serious numbers, Lauren.
Yeah, you're right. They must be on the climb now, and Kevin's definitely going to try and cover anything else that's coming out of this group. Which he's just done with Shane. So, yeah, now at 4K to the finish, it's just like put your head down and go.
Looks like Shane and Bouchard Hall will be able to link up here on the front. So that'd be nice to have at least one rider with you. I thought this would go down to ones and twos. I didn't think it would happen this quickly. Just about a minute on to the bottom of the climb. Looks like Bouchard Hall is going to be happy to sit with Shane. I don't think he wants to drop him. I think he'll ride with Jordan Shane as long as he can here. And then Charlie Beek a little bit further back with Jane Yeager, Ben Thomas, Zach Nair, Matt Zimmer, all there.
Yeah, the amount of time that we've seen Kevin stand up, sit down, I don't know that he's feeling too comfortable sitting on Shane's wheel. This could be, putting Kevin under a bit of pressure.
And you see Bouchard Hall rocking that bike underneath him. Some riders. Go ahead, Garrett.
It's great to have the live footage of the individual riders, right? Because the avatars that we're seeing, we don't quite get a good picture of how hard they are actually going. Where we look at Kevin Bouchard Hall there, and he's going hard, and he looks a little uncomfortable getting in and out of the saddle, and just trying to hang on to Shane here and see how it shakes out at the end.
And we're also there's zones. You see the bars below the names of the riders floating above their head. Shows the sort of relative power zone that they're in based on each individual rider's established power zone in the game. They have a sort of maximum level that the game knows, and then it breaks them down into these different zones where the blue is or green is the easiest, and then as you get into red, that is the hardest zone of power riding. 12% gradient right now, or darn near it for George Shane and Bouchard Hall on the front.
Woo!
If you've ever ridden a 12% gradient, which I can tell Lauren has, you know how painful that is.
Just the number makes my stomach turn, and just seeing that olive red, oh man, just seeing these guys giving her, it's oh my gosh, this is good racing, and I'm glad I'm here and they're there.
Jaden Yeager still looks like he's out for a nice Sunday cruise. The only difference is that the jersey's unzipped. I think he's bumped the fan speed up a little bit, but he doesn't look like he's suffering too much. I mean, we saw Kevin Bouchard Hall all over the bike. He was up and down out of the saddle. Yeager looks like he's at the beach.
Yeah, and he's doing pretty good because I think he's a flatlander from Wisconsin, I believe.
Yeah.
So he's hanging up there with the climbers.
Shane and Bouchard Hall still going at it up here, gaining time on those riders behind him. They're up to 80 meters back to Jaden Yeager leading the charge for the field. But still plenty of climbing to go. It looks good early here for Shane and Bouchard Hall, but let's wait and see what Jaden Yeager has up his sleeve.
Yeah, Brad, like you say, and this is just attrition to the finish line now. And we saw Zimmer dropped off the back. Zach and that is still in the main group. So, yeah, this is good for Project Echelon, and see what those guys are up to.
Little surprised to see Bouchard Hall letting this big of a gap open up at this time, and it really does matter as the speeds drop. The gap that you need to maintain to get a draft gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's one of the really hard parts about this game is the gaming part of it, in which you need to be able to modulate your power perfectly enough to stay on that wheel. You don't want to go too hard that you go past the rider. You don't want to go too easy that you let a gap open up. Still listening to Project Echelon here. Let's see what they're saying about this break at 2. I'm wondering if there's anything they could do for Jordan Shane at this point.
Cheer him on. If you're dropped and you can breathe, which somebody obviously cannot, so just cheer him on.
All right, hey guys, they're coming to us in 30 seconds for Discord. Oh boy.
Good, Jordan. Nice job.
All right, dudes. Stay attentive. Stay on it. Go, Jordan. Smooth. Oh, my boys, keep it under control. Smooth is fast. Smooth is fast. Yeah, boys.
Brad, I can remember being
smooth.
Yeah, right. I can remember being at Tour of California, and I was close enough to Katie Hall when she was winning the stage in Lake Tahoe to hear what's going on in the radio. And our director, Rachel Hill, was just constantly in her ear of like, you're doing good, keep this pace, keep it up, you got this, all this positive reinforcement. And some people love that, and some people don't want to be talked to at all. I appreciated the reinforcement, the encouragement. Every bit helps in my mind. So it's nice to hear that those guys are at least talking to each other in Discord and just kind of keeping Shane under control and giving him all the support he needs.
Yeah, how many times have we seen in the real life racing where the rider will rip the earpiece out in the final kilometer, right? Like, I get it. I know exactly what I'm doing. I don't need any more encouragement. So, yeah, some riders like to have some riders not so much. Sometimes I wish I could rip my headphones off.
Looks like Kevin Bouchard-Hall up there on the live stream is going hard, but it looks like he's getting into kind of a rhythm. So we don't have anything to see what Jordan Shane looks like, but yeah, it looks like Bouchard-Hall has sort of settled into a bit of a rhythm here, and we'll see how the rest of the climb goes for him.
Yeah, Garrett, you're totally right. I mean, when he first started the climb, we saw him like dropping his head and kind of standing up and kind of that like urgency of pedal stroke. But yeah, now, the standing sitting is still there, but it's more controlled. He's focused on the game and what's going on and how many kilometers are left.
I think Bouchard-Hall is just comfortable getting out of the saddle. It's his riding style. Some riders just like to ride that way. I think that's what we're seeing from Bouchard-Hall here. One day we'll get a sensor in the saddle, and we'll be able to tell when they're standing up in real life. It'll translate over to the game.
Brad, how is it determined who... Sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
I was just going to say that it's a really good ride for Thomas back there, too. He's going to try and secure that GC spot along with Jaeger. And for Zach to just be back there kind of covered and, well, hopefully going to ride into the finish, too. This is kind of his course. I think he's a little bit more of a climber for, it'd be good for tomorrow, kind of set those guys up well.
Remember, big GC implications for Thomas as well. He's one of the GC competitors in the overall here. So he's looking at time and points. Garrett, you had a question.
Oh, yeah, I just noticed that some of the webcams. Do you know how it's determined who has the webcam? Is that a volunteer basis, or how does that work?
Yeah, we ask all riders to check in to the webcam. Some of them are unable because of internet bandwidth, if they only have a limited amount of connection. But we do ask everyone to tune in. Most riders are pretty good about it. Usually there's a technical issue if we don't get cameras from the riders. But
okay.
Yeah, that's on them. They can make the choice as to whether or not they want to have their camera on.
Great.
All right, so Shane and Bouchard-Hall here on the way up inside the last kilometer of racing. This is going to come down to a good old-fashioned drag race, but these guys are not coming back. This is going to be 1 and 2 in the race, and it's going to be decided on the final climb here.
They had that hot second of reprieve right there in that corner, and it dropped to 4%. It was at 11% climbing gradient. Yeah, oh my gosh, this is hurting so bad for these guys right now.
Bouchard-Hall staying in second position, waiting to make his move. You see they're both still in the power zone. Here goes Bouchard-Hall into red at 600 meters to go. Trying to close down the gap just a little bit, but he is definitely waiting. Bouchard-Hall is biding his time here. He's waiting to make a move to go around Shane, but he's running out of time. Down to 500 meters now. I'm waiting to see the power zones change.
Yeah, you can't go too early on a climb because, I mean, it takes a lot longer to cover those 500 meters at 9% versus flat run-in.
Bouchard-Hall waiting. You see the upper left-hand corner. It shows the very slight advantage that he's getting from the draft here. It's about a 10-watt advantage sitting behind Shane on the way up, down to 350 meters. So Bouchard-Hall definitely waiting. This is a tactical uphill sprint on the way up to the finish.
It's been regardless of how it shakes out, it's been an impressive ride by Jordan Shane. He's led the whole climb from basically bottom to top.
Yeah, the man that started this split, started this move before Kevin Bouchard-Hall came up to him. And now Bouchard-Hall into the red zone. This is it. Here's his big move for Kevin Bouchard-Hall. And he will be well on his way to adding another victory here. It's been a really good season, too, for Kevin Bouchard-Hall so far. And it looks like he's going to add another victory to his resume here on the Mogollon Climb as he will pick up stage 2 of the virtual Tour of the Gila here in the Echelon Racing League. Kevin Bouchard-Hall adds another one to his resume here in 2020. Rod, Jordan Shane as well. Wouldn't have been possible without Shane. The reason that this race went the way it did today was because of Jordan Shane's initial breakaway. So all the credit in the world to Jordan. Meanwhile, a cracked Kevin Bouchard-Hall.
Woo. Man, if that doesn't tell you what that effort was, I don't know what does. That's really good. And what a great result, yeah, like you're saying, Garrett, for Jordan Shane to be up there and essentially pull these guys out to the line. Yeah, that's now Jordan's moved himself up and Project Echelon up into a good spot.
This is the race for third shaking out right now. Looks like Ben Thomas on his way in just ahead of Jaden Yeager. I think Thomas is going to be able to hold on here, so that'll be a nice get for Ben Thomas on the day today. Won't quite pick up the time that he needs to move up in the GC overall, but does get him into this select group of 4 or 5 finishing here. Brad Bickley up next. And then you're going to see Zimmer, Beek behind him. We talked about Matt Zimmer a lot today as well. Very aggressive in the early breaks.
Yeah, good racing by Zimmer and way to finish out pretty strong. I mean, he was out front for a bit solo and spending quite a bit of energy out there. So for him to rebound and recover and still be in the top 10 at the finish of Mogollon is a good result.
Garrett, you were talking about some of the performances today, typically being a pretty good indicator of the performance tomorrow on the Gila Monster stage. If you're one of these first 6, 7 guys that finished in that group, you're good. You're like, I can do this. I'm in a good spot, all things considered. If you were within 20 seconds of the winner on the climb today, you got a real shot at winning tomorrow's stage.
Definitely. I think Kevin Bouchard-Hall is definitely the guy that everyone has to work against, kind of, because he's just in the last little bit there. He opened a 50-meter gap pretty easily. But the rest of the guys are there, and then there's some people who aren't up there, like that Matt Usborne, who had some technical difficulties, who I would expect to be back up there tomorrow, and he might be a little bit fresh, right? Because he didn't have to go quite as hard at the end today.
The intrigue never ends in the Echelon Racing League. Will Usborne be better having taken the day off, or does it affect him today?
And it can kind of go both ways sometimes, right? You know, a lot of times, especially things like the time trial yesterday, people might, not do as well initially at the time trial, but today you might do a little better because you sort of opened up your legs a little bit, and today can go like that for tomorrow as well. But then fatigue starts to play in the role on day 3. So it sort of depends upon the individual.
Yeah, you got to wonder if Jordan Yeager played it right by doing his TT first thing in the morning or early in the morning yesterday, and then sitting back and having a beer and getting some recovery for today. And he had a good ride for today, as we saw here at the finish. And yeah, does that set him up well and farewell for tomorrow?
Watching the rest of our top 20 roll in, we saw Davenport in for 10th, Barty in for 11th. Gonsalves taking 12th place, Silen Corva in for 13th, and then we saw Schaefer and Will Harden just coming across the line there. So top 10 in, and I always love looking at the watts per kilo on this match out here in this one. A lot of times you see a lot of variation in that watts per kilo category. At 4.24 for Kevin Bouchard Hall and 4.75 for Jordan Shane today. Relatively easy match. That makes sense. Shane starting the breakaway, so spent a little more time solo off the front, and then Bouchard Hall joining him for a 4.24 average.
Yeah, Brad, you look down there again at Matt Zimmer, who was off the front a bit solo, and he's at 4.79. So that's just an indication of, yeah, you get out there and you stick your nose in the wind. It does take a bit more effort, and it's going to have a lasting effect.
And you can see came down to 9 seconds for Jordan Shane up to Kevin Bouchard Hall in an hour 20-minute effort or just under it for our eventual winner. And then Ben Thomas into third. Great ride for the British rider, Team Tour 2000 at 31 seconds back. Thomas going to move up in the GC again because of the Matt Usborne technical earlier today. And then Jane Yeager also there at 33 seconds back. I thought Yeager would do a little better today. Maybe spent a little bit too much time in cribbage last night. A little late getting to bed.
Well, again, he's also kind of a bigger guy too, so going up on that climb up against someone like Kevin Bouchard Hall or Jordan Shane, I'm a slightly disagree with you there. I think that's a good result for him.
All right, sounds like we have Kevin Bouchard Hall, our race winner, in our Tailwind winners room. Let's see if we can grab a word with Emma and Kevin.
All right. Good job, dudes. That was fun to watch.
I'm here with Kevin Bouchard Hall, the winner of the Stage 2 today. Kevin, how are you feeling after that ride?
Good. Feel great. I mean, couldn't go any better than that.
You had a great time trial yesterday. How are you hoping to improve on your time trial with this race today?
Well, I knew Jordan, if you looked at his watts per kilogram, it was crazy high. And clearly he's an amazing climber and a great racer. I knew he would be the man to watch for this race. And, I thankfully had a really strong team today, and we had Jaden also up there. So we have, two GC cards to play. And then basically we had a game plan to try to protect us into the bottom of the climb. And I had a feeling that Jordan would try to light it up on all the sections, and I just had to stay with him. And the team did a really good job keeping it together at the climb. And then when Jordan wins, I was on the rivet there at the start. I almost didn't make it, but thankfully I was able to hold the draft. He did all the work on that climb. He did quite a bit. He went a lot harder than I went. I was on my limit, but he's better. And thankfully I was able to hold the draft. And you can switch that kept me there.
And talking a little bit about more your team strategy, what was your strategy going into the last climb there?
Well, there was those two guys that were up the road, and we just kind of wanted to let them sit. And one of them was Jordan's teammate. So I figured that Jordan wouldn't light up that intro climb before the plateau if he had a teammate up there. And that would save us, one less match that I had to do to try to match. And it worked out pretty well. He went hard up that, but I don't think he launched full bore because he had a teammate up the road. And then when we got to the top, we still had a bunch of teammates left, and they just rode it steady all the way to the climb and kept it controlled. So really, we didn't have to respond to attacks. We were able to sit and recover. I didn't have to do basically anything until the climb, and that's awesome.
Last question for you, Kevin, before I let you go. How are you guys prepping for Stage 3 tomorrow?
I don't know. That's what I'm gonna do this afternoon is figure out the stage. Oh, one more thing that I wanted to say is that I messaged my brother and I was like, you won Gila or did something at Gila, right? Some time ago. And he sent a message back. I was like, oh yeah, I won the I don't know how you say the name of the climb here, the Mongolian stage or whatever. 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I was like, oh, I'm doing that stage today. So I really wanted to win because y'all won the virtual one 20 years after my brother won the real one.
That's amazing. Congratulations, Kevin. We'll see you tomorrow. Back to you, Brad.
Thanks.
The Mongolian, the Mogollon on the way up to the top of the climb. I love it. But how cool, talking about Derek Bouchard Hall, a former in real life winner here, and now his brother, Kevin, getting the virtual win on the way up for Restart Racing. So this will be your GC time here after 2 days of racing in the Echelon Racing League. Bouchard Hall going to enjoy a nice lead over Ben Thomas in the GC lead. So as long as he can hold on to that gap over Thomas tomorrow, he looks like he may also win the overall here in the Echelon Racing League Week 3. He can claim a GC victory at Tour of the Gila, which I don't know if his brother ever got.
Yeah, Brad, Garrett, like you're talking about, just like Kevin said, he was a bit on the rivet right there at the beginning of the climb, and you called that. You could see it in his pedal stroke and in the Zoom chat, and just the way he was standing up and sitting down, and he like he said, he almost didn't make it. So good call, and yeah, that was good racing.
Fun to watch, and it'll be great to see how tomorrow plays out with, even Kevin mentioned that Jordan Shane was the strongest on that climb, even though he ended up winning. So we'll see what he'll come up with tomorrow.
All right, Kevin Bouchard Hall gets a big win today as we get ready for one racing, getting ready for pro women come next with the virtual tour of the Gila. They're making their way into the start pen. We're going to take a quick break here from the Echelon Racing League, and when we come back, we're back with pro women's racing.
My name is Dr. Alan Lim. I'm an exercise physiologist, and I've spent most of my career working with professional cyclists. For years, I've been getting riders to ride on static trainers that don't move. But now, with the Infinity technology by Ceres on the MP1 platform, you have fore-aft movement as well as side-to-side movement that ultimately greatly enhances comfort. Every single contact point can move in a more natural way, and over the long haul, what that means is you don't get beat up by your static trainer. With just that little bit of motion, you start to replicate what you feel in the outdoors, and that changes the entire experience. I think that one of the big reasons for that is that we're naturally tuned to want to move. Our vestibular system, when it's activated, ends up, creating, I think, a sense of harmony or joy that just isn't the same when you're not able to move. It's like the difference between a rocking chair versus a static chair. And a lot of it, I think, is about expectation, because when you get it on a bicycle, you expect it to move. And so when you get on the MP1 platform with the Infinity technology, you get that same level of movement. 6 degrees side to side, 9.5 inches fore and aft. And what that does is it creates an experience that is just so much more enjoyable, so much more fun than being on a static trainer. When you look at the design of the MP1 platform, it's not just designed for the H3 trainer by Ceres. It's also designed to be compatible with almost every new smart trainer currently on the market. So if you don't own the H3, but you have your own trainer at home, odds are this will be compatible with the MP1. Another unique feature of the Infinity technology on the Ceres MP1 platform is that it's best in class. You have 6 degrees of side-to-side motion and 9.5 inches of fore-aft motion. That's movement that specifically replicates what you feel outdoors, and there's no other competitor on the market that can simulate that type of movement. It's certainly not the kind of movement that you can get by just putting tennis balls under your trainer. You know, cycling isn't just about your legs and your lungs. It's also about being able to handle the bicycle, and that takes a lot of control in both your core as well as all of these small stabilizer muscles. On an indoor trainer that is static, you're just not getting any of that specificity. But with the Infinity technology built into the MP1 platform, you are able to use and have to use all of those stabilizers to control the bicycle. The net effect is that not only do you get a workout for your legs and your lungs, but you also get a workout for your core. The Infinity technology built into the MP1 platform creates the best-in-class movement for any trainer system. You've got 6 degrees of side-to-side movement, 9.5 inches of fore-aft movement, and the net result is way more comfort, way more fun, the ability to use your core or stabilize your muscles, and you've got a platform that is compatible with most trainers.
Welcome back. Virtual tour of the Gila for our second day of racing this weekend in the Big Mogollon Climb before we head to the Gila Monster tomorrow. Just wrapped up our pro men's race and now getting ready for pro women, which, Lauren, this season has by far been the most exciting field to watch. This battle between Jackie Godby and Julia Scalu has been bubbling since week one, and it comes to the head on the big final climb today.
No doubt. I think, again, we're going to see a lot of good racing today, just like in the men's race. It just comes down to that last climb. But all that nervousness leading up to it, and you just saw how intense that race was. So I'm excited to see how Julia fares today and puts Godby under a bit of more pressure.
I see some of our riders warming up. We're also getting ready for our para and hand cycling races, which will be going in tandem with our elite women's field in the premier slot, the second slot of racing today in our Echelon Racing League broadcast. So happy to be back at Tour of the Gila. This was one of the races that was an early adopter of virtual racing. We go back to even last year in season one of the Echelon Racing League, where I think we can get a pretty good idea of how things might play out here on
stage one. The climbers get their chance on stage two of the virtual tour of the Gila in the Echelon Racing League as riders conquered the Mogollon road race, ending with a massive climb up to the abandoned ghost town of Mogollon. Small plateau about 3 kilometers out, and then a pretty heavy kick up to the finish. Once again, Jacqueline Godby, the first aggressor in the group. About 20 minutes in, you see her weaving her way through the field and then says goodbye to about 80% of the group. That takes it down to just 4 riders, with Real, Wiseman, and Lejeune, the only 4 able to go with that move. So things calmed down a little bit for a few minutes before Godby would hit the front again. She took it down to 3 riders inside the closing 4.5 kilometers, and then this last attack sheds Lejeune out of the group. So that takes it down to Godby and Wiseman. A great ride for Wiseman today, the only rider able to stay with Jackie Godby into the final 200 meters. Now, Wiseman tried to take it to her early. You see, she goes into the red zone here trying to go past Jackie Godby, but Godby is not only able to respond, but then go over the top of the move at 150 meters to go. This would be a devastating attack for Eleanor Wiseman, and the last time that Godby had to worry about her. So Godby takes the win, but Wiseman has a great ride, learning the platform and learning how to race against Jackie Godby.
You know what to expect. I expected there would be some, breaking of the field, and I tried to stay as much as I could, on the front of the field to try and follow attacks. And I figured there would be a battle on that last climb. But I didn't really know, how many of us would still be in that front group and by the end. Yeah, I kind of just wanted to test it, I'm pretty new to virtual racing, and so I just wanted to kind of see how things would react if I just attacked a little bit early. And I figured she would, catch me. It was just a bit of a test, and obviously, she did great at the last 200 meters or so, and I just couldn't stay with her.
Final gap ends up being around 8 seconds for Wiseman up to Godby, the stage winner. Another big day of climbing with the Gila Monster for stage 3.
So, Lauren, this is a climb, obviously, that Jackie Godby knows well. Having won this climb last year in season 1, I'm sure she was back for a little bit more recon, but she's got some new riders to worry about this year. We talked about Eleanor Wiseman really being the only rider that challenged her on the climb, but this year she's got Julia Scalu to worry about.
Yeah, and seeing Erin Ayala just progress each week in her racing on the RGT platform. Had a good result yesterday in the time trial. So, yeah, between the 3 of them, I mean, it's definitely Julia and Godby's, race up the road is what we've seen most of every single race. But, hopefully maybe a little mix up today would be nice. But, hey, I expect these 2 to be off the front.
Also going to be watching Erin Ayala, who has been incredibly consistent this season for the Velocity Vixen team, and then Gabrielle Schulman and Sarah Carolus, the 2 Americans for Beast Mode presented by Rose. Kim Miller, another one to watch in 6, the German rider for the Beast Mode Rose team. You can see with 4 riders inside the top 6, it's certainly a program that has come strong in support of Julia Scalu. And then we look back a little bit further at Maura Nelson into 8th, Anna Rokkanen in 9th, and then Elisa Haig sitting in 10th place overall with just under 464 points of ninth place. So riders looking to move up in the GC, also looking to get stage wins, but I think this is really a battle for the ages this year in 2022 and season 2 of the Echelon Racing League, talking about this matchup between Godby and Skalou. What amazes me is that Skalou has not yet gotten a win here in the Echelon Racing League. I thought for sure by now into week 3 we would have seen Julia Skalou able to get at least one win, but maybe she was just waiting for the climb today.
Yeah, she just keeps trying. I mean, that's for sure. She just keeps putting the pressure on Godby, and Godby just is like relishing in the pressure. I mean, every time we interview her, she is excited about the pain that's coming. And I've never experienced an athlete that's had that kind of mindset. So it's refreshing to see, and I like the battle, and I like the rising of these athletes to they're the best.
There is the matchup that we're going to be watching today. Jackie Godby and Julia Skalou warming up right now. Godby up top and Julia Skalou down below. Godby riding out of Riverside, California, and Julia Skalou riding out of Hessen, Germany. So a international battle unfolding at the front of this one today. It's going to be really fun to watch these two, and I'm so glad that we're going to have cameras on both of them as well in our SIS Zoom room to be able to watch them conquer this final climb. It's going to be a watch these two go head-to-head on the way up. Let's talk again about the course. We watched that final climb in our men's race. Lauren, did we learn anything in the way that the men's race played out, the way that the men's race was raced?
What I really enjoyed seeing, I don't know that we learned anything, but we did see, that nervousness at the beginning of the race. Right here at the bottom of your screen, you can see the profile and seeing those color changes from green to red. We saw a little bit of nervousness through that section, and then it seemed to have settled down, and some brakes tried to go right there at the halfway point, and then towards the end, again, it just started separating out into the ones and twos.
Garrett, were you surprised how long it took for the separation to happen? It really came down to those two guys at the bottom of the climb, but there wasn't much separation before they got there.
Yeah, not really on a stage like today, because it's pretty flat going into the climb, and there's the first little kicker. We saw a little separation, then there's a nice little plateau, and then the final climb is where the two men separated themselves. So I would expect to maybe see a similar thing with the women's field, unless someone decides to light it up a little bit earlier in the race.
You can see with a max gradient of 10.5%. I think they hit that a couple times, but all the elevation gain is really at the end of the climb, Lauren. I think that's sort of the defining factor of this race today, in that you're picking up 3,000 feet of elevation, but you're doing it in the last 10 kilometers of racing. There's really only one other little hill before they get to that final climb that you have a chance to get some separation. So the sting is the tail of this one, as they say.
Yeah, right. So you've got the very first out the gate, right? You have to go hard there. You have to go over the little riser in the beginning of the first half of the race. And then it's just like, okay, here it comes. And you're just buying your time, waiting for that last climb. And we saw, like, Kevin Bouchard Hall was very uncomfortable. And Jordan just kind of, like, turning the screws on him as best he could. But, yeah, I mean, again, it came out Kevin Bouchard Hall won significantly. And so I'm really curious to see how Julia and Jacqueline are going to play out today.
We go back and look at the time trial from yesterday, which is probably the best matchup you can get in terms of raw power, trying to compare those two riders together. And Jackie Godby didn't beat Julia Skalou by a little. I mean, it was a dominant performance from Godby on the time trial. So, Lauren, does that translate to the climb today? I mean, can we expect the same gap in performance from Godby and Skalou today?
I don't know, but I'll tell you what does translate. That gives Godby a ton of confidence going into today. Kind of just having that, hey, come get me, let's see what you got attitude. And that's kind of how Godby's been in a very positive way, not in, any kind of aggressive way. But, it's Godby is saying, let's go head to head. And Shalou's definitely trying to answer that call.
All right, inside of 1 minute to race start, you see the pen of riders getting ready to roll as they will start to crank their power up here. Again, you have to have the very strong start off the line here at the Virtual Tour of the Gila, part of virtual racing. So you see everybody starting to power up, starting to crank those bikes up. Again, our para and hand cyclists also going to be leaving their start lines. They'll be racing in a parallel virtual world. We'll be checking in throughout the day with them as well. But really all about Jackie Godby up in the top left corner of our SIS Rider Zoom room there as she gets ready to light this rocket for our elite women's field. Man, this is going to be a good one. The battle we've been waiting for the better part of 4 weeks ever since Julia Salou came on the scene, and we're finally going to get the battle that we've been waiting for on the Mogollon, and then of course the Gila monster tomorrow. So, Lauren, probably not much you can do early other than try and hang with this group as long as we can. We watched riders like Megan Easler yesterday that really tried to give it a go. So I think a lot of riders are just hoping to make it to the bottom of the climb with the main group today.
Yeah, can any team kind of put some tactics towards Godby today and try and put her under even more pressure? I don't know. She's just been able to react so calmly and efficiently to anything, essentially. She'll let stuff go up the road, and she's just going to continue to do her pace, and she just claws them back and makes it look so easy.
So, Garrett, very similar to what we saw in the men's race. Oftentimes the action is at the back of these groups. It's the riders that are just trying to hang in there.
Yeah, the start is always, especially in these virtual platforms, you see the individuals are warming up for 30 minutes, if not more, ahead of time, just to get ready for the start. And it's fast and furious at the start, and some people get shelled off the back, but then it sort of settles down for a little bit, and there'll be some tacks as we go, but we'll wait for as we said earlier, the sting at the end of the race.
Early separations already, and I just wonder if that's not nervous energy or just settling in. And then here we are. Here's Godby. I was wondering where she was, if she was just kind of back there not paying attention, or yeah, she's not going to let anything go up the road.
And Godby's definitely in the driver's seat, obviously, with her performance yesterday, and then last year she won the stage, so she has the blueprint for how to go about and take care of business on a stage like today. And not only did she win this stage last year, she won all the stages, so she's a force to be reckoned with.
I think it's funny talking to Kevin Bouchard Hall earlier that he calls in Derek and gets a little 411 if he couldn't preview the course. Hey brother, tell me what can I expect on that last bit of the climb? And it's fun to see how everyone does their intel and gets all their race recon, isn't it? I mean, there's so many different ways to get so much information nowadays.
Definitely, and it seemed to work out pretty well for him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I love this look. The 5 riders of the apocalypse off the front here, working their way off the front of this field.
Everybody that we mentioned pre-race is all right here. So,
yep.
Everybody's keyed up for today's race, no doubt.
All right, well, as we watch this initial selection starting to roll in here with Godby continuing to drive the pace up on the front, looks like this is going to be the situation for a while here. I want to bring in a special guest while we have a little bit of time. One of the really cool things about the Tour of the Gila is the incredible support that this race gets from people around the community, around the city, around Grant County, and around the state of New Mexico. We're being joined right now by State Representative Luis Terraza, the representative of District includes Grant County. Representative Terraza, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's really incredible to watch this. I have never seen anything like it, other than at an arcade or something. That's amazing.
It is a new style of racing that we're experiencing here in 2020, 21, and now into 2022 as we continue to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. But I know you've always been a big supporter of the Tour of the Gila, going way, way back. Race director Jack Brennan really listed you as one of the great champions of this race. What is it about Tour of the Gila that makes you so supportive?
Well, I think it's a wonderful thing that Silver City and Grant County has been able to sponsor over the years. I think it's a beautiful community event. I've taken my children. They're all graduated. One got married last weekend. They've all been to the Tour of the Gila since they were little. Uh, there's nothing like lining up downtown and just watching them go round and round, trying to outpace each other. It's a wonderful event, and you just to see the community come together, eating, drinking, and enjoying the downtown area together, and enjoying something like this that Jack has put so much heart and soul into, and has made it such a huge event.
And a
All these people come from all over the world. It's wonderful.
pretty incredible postcard for Silver City and Grant County as well. I mean, what a better way to show off your home than bringing people from all over the world to take pictures and make videos about this beautiful land.
It's wonderful. Again, so he has different courses, all that. And one of them goes by my funeral home. I'm a funeral director. That's really what I do for a living. And so Jack and I have coordinated for years. He actually coordinates, but he tells me, look, this is where the course is going to go. Call me if you have any funeral processions going through there. Jack and I have been able to get a whole funeral procession in between them, going in circles, passing the funeral procession into a church that's downtown, St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church, and we're able to get our whole the whole group in there and still not disturb the race. So it's been a pretty incredible thing to work with Jack, and Jack really, my hats off to that man. He's a good man, and he has volunteered I can't even imagine how many hours to make this become what it is today.
Speaks to the incredible team behind the scenes that make it happen, including you. I know you have, even if you think it's a small part, you do have a part in making the Tour of Gila happen every year. So thank you for that, and thanks for being with us on the virtual race today. It's really cool to be able to connect with people like you in the virtual world as we wait to be back in person this year. So thanks for joining us, Representative Luis Terraza from District 39 here at the virtual Tour of the Gila.
Brad, God bless. Thank you very much, and I hope everyone stays safe and enjoys the race.
Well, just one of the many very cool people that we get to meet here at the Tour of the Gila. We heard from the Lieutenant Governor at the start of the race today, state representatives. We're going to have some state senators checking in as well. It really is a community event, Lauren. It's amazing the support that this race has.
Brad, who knew he owned a funeral home? Like, these are the stories that you never hear about as a bike racer, right? I mean, you're so focused on what happens between the barriers and in between the cars, but to know this is the stories of the community that tells you what goes into putting on a bike race is to have to work around a funeral procession. And all I have to say is, next time we race by his funeral home, can he put out like a casket or something? Let's just jazz it up a little bit for all the racers knowing what's coming.
Well, certainly has experience in the caravan. A funeral procession probably looks very similar in size and scope to a UCI caravan. There's the, same traffic principles that apply. So it's sort of a natural fit. Yeah, very cool to be able to work with us. We've done some crazy things at bike races to make them happen. At the Giro de Grafton, part of the Tour of America's Dairyland that we had a few weeks ago, they have a fire station on the inside of one of their criterium courses. And for an entire day, the entire fire station moves their operation into a parking lot outside of the course. They relocate the entire fire station. And there's all these rules that go in. You have to have all this stuff available if you're going to, close down a fire station. But they move all the engines out. They move all the gear out. They have it all ready to go so that they can serve the community if need be from outside of the course. It's just amazing what goes into to the local work behind the scenes. I know you're starting to see a lot of that now in your post-career retirement, seeing more of what goes on behind the scenes at these races. It's really incredible.
I absolutely love it, and now it just confirms my notions and thoughts that USA Cycling puts on the safest races in the world. And just to see, like you said, all the people. as a racer, I always enjoy just telling the volunteers thank you, because they are volunteers and they're standing on the corner and somebody's driving up and they're not very happy about having to stop for some bike race that's messing up their Saturday morning. But that's a lot of effort and a lot of time on their part. It's their Saturday morning. They could be doing something else. So a thank you goes a long way, because you never know what goes on behind the scenes. And to put on such a great community event, and you're from out of town, you don't live there, you're just there to essentially put on a good show and do your job. So that is such a great story, and so nice to have people like him on just to talk about what goes on behind the scenes, and to know, like you said, about the fire department having to move their entire all of their stuff outward, and to be prepared and ready to, again, to serve their community. They're serving the community by having this bike race and by being available for any 911 calls. That's amazing.
Yeah. Garrett, it's a small but mighty community down in Silver City. I guess you are technically now an adopted local, right? Are you considered a Silver City local by now?
I would maybe, hopefully. I love my green chili and my green chili sauce, and so I think that goes a long way as well. But to add on to what you guys are saying, I think it is very impressive, especially Silver City's a small community, 10-20,000 people if you consider the other areas, and it has basically right now one of the biggest bike races in the United States, and it's been going on for, what did Jack say, 30 plus years. So not only their Jack, the race director, I know for Western New Mexico University, where I work, I get the students out there for the stages. We hand out neutral water, things like that. I give them a little bit extra credit as well, but they get out there for all the stages. There's all the host housing involved, etc. So I think it's pretty impressive, and it shows the character of Silver City and Grant County at supporting such an event. And it's a big part of our community, and we hope to see the race continue for many years into the future.
You mentioned Western New Mexico University. We're going to be hearing from Dr. Bettison a little bit later today. I always get the opportunity to talk with Dr. Bettison for the start of the Tour of the Gila, because I'm constantly learning about the pottery, the Nimbus pottery in the area, which the winners' trophies at the Tour of the Gila are based off of. And so we get it's a cool little history lesson every year. Lauren, I know we saw that trophy at the top of the show. By far, one of the coolest trophies in bike racing.
No doubt, handmade from the community. Like, it's just, it definitely would stand out on your mantle. I never won Tour of the Gila, but they're just absolutely gorgeous, and I would always admire the GC riders that did win one of those pieces of potteries, because it's homemade and it's hand painted. It's just a work of art.
Let's hear from Dr. Bettison right now, actually, about our winner's trophy here at Tour of the Gila.
Well, the reason that they survive is that many of them are found buried as a last final function of the vessel, to be buried with the deceased. And it's not just vessels. Sometimes it's, or vessel, I mean, members, folks can be buried anywhere in their life with a particular vessel, mainly a black on white, which is what is captured everyone's imagination. And is what they'll get a replica of, the winners of this Tour of the Gila.
That is the famous black on white style of pottery, and we saw some of our previous overall winners with their pottery. It's a pretty cool connection to the local people of Air Tour of the Gila, talking about the local art. I mean, it's a really cool connection.
And how cool is it that our virtual race winners also got the winner's trophy this last year? I think that's really cool. It's you never know what you're going to get in the virtual world, and this year you get your NFT. I don't know which one I'd like better, the NFT or the piece of pottery. I'm going to go with the pottery because I know nothing about an NFT.
And what's kind of neat is I spend a lot of time, I don't ride bicycle as much, but I spend a lot of time exploring the Gila National Forest and the Gila Wilderness. And there's a lot of ancient culture that can be found. Geronimo grew up in the area, etc. And what's neat is you can find some of these ancient cliff dwellings where there are some pottery shards that you can still see laying around, and you don't disturb them, you leave them, but it's neat that that's still out there to be found in the wilderness.
And to appreciate and to see and to explore and to know that history. Yeah, I mean, could you imagine? I think about that a lot of times. Just what would it be like to live back in that time, and what would you do, and how do you live and survive? It is astounding.
Exactly. There's no turn on the water and get hot water, or adjust the thermostat to adjust our temperature, or do virtual racing on the internet, right?
Yep.
My, how far we've come. Taking a look at second group on the screen right here. This is the separation back to sixth place with Dorr, Nelson, Ulay, and Baker, who are coming up on a kilometer behind the lead group of 5. So there's the separation right there. Godby, Shalou, Ayala, and Easler are clear. This is going to be a nice race for a second. We'll keep an eye on this group as well. Garrett, you were talking about even just getting hot water, things like that. The water vessels are a big part of what Dr. Bettis really studies. She has been able to learn a lot from studying the water vessels. And Lauren, as you were talking about trying to piece together what life was like back then, well, it turns out that's exactly what Dr. Bettison does. Take a listen to this.
Well, the Mims people, it's one of the branches of a cultural group that we define as the Mogollon. So they're the Mimbres Mogollons. So they're a branch that lives in a particular area in the Southwest. And as groups of Mogollon peoples, whether they're Mimbres or Jornada or something like that, they look more similar to each other than to other cultures, at least to our eyes as archaeologists. And so the Mimbres, although are very specifically different and make themselves a branch within the Mogollon because of their pottery traditions, the way they live, the way they organize on the landscape. So it can also be used to define the culture itself as the Mimbres and Mimbres pottery in particular during a very specific time frame. People don't think of as the group as being around for a long span in terms of in general, people don't think that way. I do. I think of it as the Mimbres people start becoming Mimbres, when they come into the area, when they inhabit the area, and then just seeing these changes in pottery and the way they organize themselves. To me, there seems to be a difference. So I'm going to refer to them all as the Mimbres, but there's other people that will say, when I talk about the Mimbres, I'm talking about the Mimbres Classic period, which is when all this beautiful black on white pottery is done in this area of the Southwest. Between about, I guess I'd say 850 to 1140, if you're going to define sort of the height of when they were making this black on white pottery. Well, the Mimbres people, it's one of the, it's one of.
Sorry about that. Little history lesson from Dr. Bettison. It turns out the Nan Ranch collection at Western New Mexico University is the largest and most complete in the country, and that's a big part of what Dr. Bettison did during her time at Western New Mexico University, was sort of curating the collection that they have there. I didn't realize how big the Nan Ranch collection was at Western New Mexico University, but it turns out it's pretty culturally important.
Well, when we excavate, we will take samples of soil from different things. So if there's a vessel that we find on the floor or somewhere that, has been, we'll take the soil sample out of the middle of the vessel, or we'll take that vessel and use distilled water and do a wash and pour that into, that's called a pond wash. So we want to see what that vessel was holding. That's kind of how you can, they don't always dry and preserve very well. You know, corn cobs and maybe there or something like that, but or beans. But that's the way to find out what they were using certain vessels for, but also what they were eating. Then we also take these soil samples and flotation samples, which then go back to the lab. And I never really did flotation samples. It kind of tells you what flora are in there, what types of plants are around the site, what plants people may be using at the site. So that's how we know some of those things. Of course, with also remnants of squash, beans, and corn, we know about that, prickly pear, things like that. That comes from anything that we would get from a pollen wash or a pollen sample, a flotation sample. Then the other way we know what they eat in terms of animals is to see what's in their trash in terms of faunal remains. So, you know, do we have a whole lot of, at certain times, whether it's in the northern part of the Southwest or in this part of the Southwest, when drought comes into play, you see an increase in rodentia, which are mice and field mice and rats and things like that. You also go seeing more to rabbit drives, things like that. But you also see things like mule deer in there. What you don't see, I mean, it's rarity, is elk. So elk was not located in this area. They did not eat elk on a regular basis. But then there's other faunal bones that come up and it can be put in a special place. I mean, so dogs may not be in there, but dogs could be buried. They have been in other archaeological sites, not necessarily members. Turkey wings. We also find debris from macaws. They're not being eaten. We don't, the whole turkey questions up and down. Is it just for their feathers? Is it for other things? Or is it also something that they're eating? But it's mainly by trying to figure out what they're eating is by doing, with permission nowadays, because it was, is doing testing of ratios of carbon in human bones to find out how much they're relying on crops versus hunted and wild game. It does show up differently, and you're talking to someone that knows a little tiny bit about that. Enough to go, oh, okay, that's what they found? Great, okay. That's, you know, that's not my forte at all. But they do that also to just see the health condition of folks. But that sort of analysis, since it's destructive, is something that has to be done only with permission today. That's not something that we do without permission from the appropriate tribal entities.
It's always a pleasure learning from Dr. Bettison. I had no idea that they were able to glean so much information just from a little bit of pottery. They were able to learn about their diets and what they were eating and drinking, how they were living, and it really speaks to the importance of the work that Dr. Bettison does and what we're able to learn about.
And the importance of having the respect and trust of the people of the land. So that's got to be a really hard job.
A newcomer on the scene here off the front of the race. We're looking at the British rider Mobbs taking a look. She has put Godby and Skaloo in a little bit of trouble here. Some separation there. Going back to those two. Ayala letting a small gap open up. So this is the race for what is now fourth place. Normally that's the race for third because we're used to seeing Godby and Skaloo up there racing on the front. So Mobbs is the wild card out there today, crushing 5 kilo on the front right now.
Good to see. And, you know, this is where you can kind of put Godby and Shalou under a little bit of pressure and to where they'll start looking at each other of who's going to pull this back or, what kind of effort are you going to do are you going to let that go up the road? And it's nice to see a new name at the top of the list.
And this may force Godby and Skaloo to even cooperate, dare I say, in this situation.
As Lauren was alluding to, it Godby and Salou sort of they mark each other, so it actually provides some opportunities for other individuals as these two kind of look and watch each other. They're not as concerned about other individuals, and that can be a great opportunity for example, what Mobs is doing.
Got two dogs fighting for a bone. A third one comes along and takes it.
And I think this is kind of similar to what we saw in the men's race. You know, that first little bump, it kind of makes everybody a little nervous, a little separation, a couple attacks off the front, see how long that Gobbs can sustain this effort up there. And if anybody joins her that's not Godby or Chalou or, you know, and then hopefully she has enough in the reserve if and when she does get caught to sustain the effort towards the finish.
Important to note, still at 31 kilometers of racing to go, so they got plenty of time to bring Mobs back. It's easy to start strong, but we'll see if she can hold on to it. Got that group of three racing behind her, as it looks like Ayala has made it back up to that group. So a great riding from Erin Ayala today, as she has made that selection, went across the gap from the Isla group, and is now joining Godby and Scalou. So Mobs has a pretty big problem behind her. Godby, Scalou, and Ayala. That is not the trio that you want hunting you down here on RGT. These are riders that know the platform well, have had good results in the Echelon Racing League. So, Garrett, if I'm Mobs, I say I'd link up with this group and be thankful that I made it in this selection of four.
Definitely. It was a hard selection at the start, and we saw, a couple kilometers into the race, there was 5-6 riders that were still there, and now you're riding off the front with, you know, a couple of these super strong individuals behind you. So I think you got to give Mobs a little bit of credit here and see what she can do, and maybe she can hold it for a while.
Mobs riding for the faster cyclist team with Dominika Jimnicki, Urska Kurent. We saw some good results early on in the season with Brenna Nelson and Mormon Nelson in there as well, and then Laura Perry rounding out the faster cyclist squad. So looks like Mobs has taken over for Kurent as your team leader. Still big effort. She was just in the red zone for a little bit. So Mobs is, it's not easy to stay off the front like this. I mean, she's putting in a huge effort just to keep off Scalou, Godby, and Ayala behind her. Oh, look at Ayala trying to fight in this group.
Yeah, the longer that Ayala can stay with these two, the more confident she'll be, and the more confidence she'll have moving forward. And you know, I hope that she can stick their wheel for most of this race or all this race.
And I think that's kind of key. What you mentioned is for Ayala just to stay on the wheel. Don't do any work. Stay on the wheel and hang on as long as you can.
This is a great situation for Ayala because she's got Godby and Scalou kind of on the back foot, playing defense for really the first time in the Echelon Racing League. And she's using every bit of what that she had to try and stay with this group. This might be the ride of the day, no matter who wins this race. If Erin Ayala can stay with Jackie Godby and Julia Scalou on a day like today, I mean, that's your ride of the week right there.
You can see they're kind of hitting this little riser right here at 5%, and it's putting the pressure on Ayala. Unfortunately, a bit of a gap. I don't know if I hope she can get that back. Still, it's been early in the race. Hopefully she can recover and try and get back up to those too.
We're talking about some of our favorite trophies over time. She has her Tour of America's Dairyland overall trophies over her left shoulder. You see just below that wheel. I recognize those as familiar overall category winner trophies from Tour of America's Dairyland. So nice to see that she's got some of her Palmares displayed next to what looks like her collection of race numbers. Velocity Vixen with just two other riders on the squad here with Bonacisi and Holly Larson. So Ayala has really been riding her own race. She doesn't have really many teammates on in terms of trying to use team tactics like we talked about with some of the bigger men's squads, but it hasn't affected Ayala yet this season. She has had a great year here in Season 2 of the Echelon Racing League. And back to it today, hung with that first group for a good part of that first little climb. All right, Godby and Scalou have now caught Mobs up on the front. And I'm wondering if Mobs might be realizing that she took off a pretty big bite to chew here. And
but why not? I mean, you know, we have just seen these two go up the road over and over and over again, and you got to take it to these two and just see what you can do. And we're almost to the halfway point, and you know, you make them come to you, and then you hope like heck that you can hold their wheels when they come around.
Back to Megan Easler in 5th spot for Project Echelon Racing. Watched Easler suffer yesterday in the individual time trial. Looks like she's back in a familiar time trial scenario now, all by herself out on the road. It's a tough place to be on RGT once you lose that draft, but Easler showed that she had trainer gene, whatever wiring is in athletes' DNA that allow them to push themselves on the trainer that I don't have and Garrett doesn't have, but we know Megan Easler has it.
No man's land, but it seems like anybody that's racing RGT is kind of comfortable in no man's land. They thrive here. They thrive on the trainer. Yeah. Tough spot to be in.
Yeah, and Easler looking at triple digits in front of her and behind her. She's at just under 600 meters up to Ayala and then a kilometer back to Emma O'Toole. So doesn't even have other riders in sight for Easler right now as we go back up to the front with Jackie Godby back to leading the way. Did not expect to see a third rider in this selection today. This was a not on my bingo card for our elite women's field. The dominant way that Godby and Skalou have been riding so far this season. But Mob's the new addition to the front group.
Exactly, Brad. We haven't even heard of Mobs until today, as far as I know. So yeah, this is a good change for us and give us some good insight moving forward, I hope.
Looks like Jackie Godby's Soigneur opening up a package of SIS for her. Perfect sponsor placement. I love it. Labels out and everything. Man, look at the focus that Jackie Godby has. I mean, she can't even look away to take a gel. Like, you have to be so focused on this game that Godby can't even sacrifice, you know, the couple seconds to rip open that top. But she doesn't want to lose that draft. She doesn't want to do any more work than she has to. It's incredible watching the precise work of Jackie Godby in these virtual races.
Even the squeezing of said gel.
Totally. But that's why. That's why Jackie Godby always has the lowest average watts per kilo. When we, we look at the results, she's always at the top, but somehow she always has that magic ratio. It's because of things like that. She doesn't waste a single watt when she's out there racing. Her support, by the way, is John Cooper, who just finished the men's race before this one. So there's some dedication behind the scenes as well. John races with the XXX Athletico squad in our men's field in the Echelon Racing League. Then you always see him supporting Jackie as well when it's time for her to race. Solo, Aaron Ayala. Seeing some red numbers up front for Godby and Mobs. So they might be going at it as they come up to the halfway mark.
And Aaron actually sent us a message on Facebook. It's Dr. Aaron Ayala. And yes, she was a triathlete or is a triathlete. So that confirms what we were talking about earlier, I think in the men's race, talking about Erin and just some of her race history prior to RGT. Yeah, it was nice to see a little bit more background on Erin, and she's done Unbound a couple of times, the 100, the 200, so very well-rounded athlete.
Erin Al with her PhD in psychology, licensed psychologist. Got her undergrad in psychology and women's studies from St. Catherine University, and then her doctoral degree in counseling psychology from the University of Albany in Albany, New York. I guess that would explain the ability to ride so well on the trainer. I think there's a lot of sports psychology that goes into trainer riding. There is a huge element involved in virtual racing. You can have the best legs in the world, you can have a huge VO2 max, but if you can't push yourself to use that power, then it doesn't do you much good. Did you ever work with a sports psychologist, either of you? Did you guys ever have one on the team? Like, would either of your teams have ever linked you up with one, Lauren, maybe on United Healthcare or the national team?
I actually took on a sports psychologist on my own, but we did for Optum. We brought in a sports psychologist for a couple of our team time trial camps, just to talk through those efforts and that bonding situation, because a team time trial is such a hard effort and such a team effort. But I enjoyed it. As a matter of fact, I was going to joke with Erin later and ask for some guidance for trainer positive reinforcement. Like, what does it take, man? How do I get that mindset to even just get on that thing sometimes? But no, I find that to be extremely important. I think this is the new unknown territory is mental health and the mind games that go into it. This is kind of the unknown area that we haven't really had a chance to explore, because you can't quantify numbers or data essentially for your mindset. But I think it is extremely important, and it just carried over into life. I mean, because it's not just the athlete that lines up on the start line, it's everything that took to get to the start line essentially. And we've seen this in RGT. We've got families, we've got work, we've got life going on around you, and that is just right in your face in RGT, which is a good thing to see. We need to know the athlete way more than just a bike racer. We need to know who they are as a whole person.
Yeah, and I've never had the opportunity while I was racing to work with Un, but here at our kinesiology department at Western New Mexico University, I'm sort of the exercise physiology side of things. I work with the watts per kilogram, VO2 max testing, etc. But my coworker, Dr. Takahiro Sato, he does a lot of the stuff more related to sports psychology, works with mental imagery, things like that, which as Lauren was saying, I think it's a big role. We sort of know how to maximize a lot of our physical performance, but what happens between our ears right now is kind of a big black box that I think holds a key to improving a lot of performance.
Well, now knowing that we have so much available to us, I'm making a comeback between Erin and Garrett. I got my mental, got my physical. I just need a mechanic, and then I'll be set to go. But I'm establishing a super team to mount my comeback to cycling here.
Hey, we're supposed to do tandem at Iron Horse. Remember, don't you forget that. I'm not going to forget that.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant. I'm getting all trained up for our Iron Horse Bicycle Classic race.
I have high expectations of you, Brad.
Trust me, you're going to need a sports psychologist after our tandem race together. We're both going to need him.
Brad, I think you're too much of a project.
I'm going to take that as a compliment. Thank you.
There's definite hope. There's hope for Brad. But
we
just
call
to
that
let you know,
potential
Brad,
where I come from.
Yeah, I'm quite different on the bike than off the bike. So if I get a little angry, don't take it personally.
That's good marketing, right? If there's hope for Brad, there's hope for anybody.
There you go. See, if you
New t-shirt.
If you can give me, yeah. Well, we are just over halfway through our stage today as we take a look at our front group. Godby, Skaloo, and Mobs still there. All the credit in the world to Mobs. This is a great ride for a new rider. We also have our para and hand cycling underway as well. We'll go check in with them where we've got a pretty good battle unfolding on the front between Kuman and Art. We watched Kuman ride away with the individual time trial yesterday, but Art now. It's a day for new competition at the front of these races, Lauren.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? And to have these avatars, this is a new addition to RGT, and some of these newcomers to bike racing. It's been a lot of fun to watch these races play out just as much as any of the other races.
And so cool, again, having the addition of the hand and paracycling avatars in RGT, a new addition for 2022 in Season 2. I love being able to watch this racing.
Yeah, and I think it's excellent from just a perspective. We have this idea, and the American College of Sports Medicine came out with it, and I teach all my students that exercise truly is medicine. And so any way that we can get people out there to exercise and, hand cycling, etc., adapted fitness, these are such great ways to get people out there exercising and reaping the benefits of exercise. It's just great to see, and that RGT offered this platform for this to happen.
And obviously working hand in hand with Project Echelon and their mission, working closely with the Paralyzed Veterans of America as well, and the CAF, the Challenged Athletes Foundation. See a lot of their riders out competing. So big thank you to Project Echelon, the PVA, and of course RGT for being open to making this happen. Not every platform or every business would be open to an opportunity like this, but RGT was first to raise their hand and say, we want to make this happen. These two locked in. This looks very similar to the way that these guys ride in real life. I'm always amazed in cycling, the drafting that goes into hand and para racing. They have this bump bar that goes across the back of these bikes. It's basically like a rotating crossbar because the front tire of the rider behind them will actually make contact with the other riders. There's a lot more contact in hand and paracycling, obviously, than we see in able-bodied cycling, but it's because that drafting is so important and they have so much momentum. So they install these rolling bump bars, very similar to if you were motor pacing with a motorcycle. A lot of times people will install those bars like over the rear wheel of a motorcycle if you're trying to motor pace. But it's incredible how closely they ride together, and they've done a good job of recreating those dynamics, those physics in RGT.
And like you said, Brad, you can see in the top left-hand corner of the drafting capability, and when the numbers, you can see the two avatars up there in the top left-hand corner of drafting, and then you can also see when the number goes to red that they're expending energy that they could probably be saving, which is a good thing to see in the whole platform and to understand what's going on and why he's drafting.
These two coming just under 30K to go, so we'll keep our eye on the front of our hand cycling competition. We also have a parallel paracycling competition in a third virtual world as well. And nice to see Joe Bernie up on the front of this. We talked about Joe a little bit yesterday, a 3-time Paralympian, a 4-time Paralympic medalist, including a gold.
Kind of an amazing athlete.
Yeah.
Do you know how faster would he go if he shaved his beard?
I don't think that's on the table for Joe. I think that's a non-negotiable.
No, totally. It's definitely who he is, and it's nice to see. So yeah.
You can actually store a little nutrition in your beard as well, so that's always a positive.
And you see behind Joe, Key sitting in second position, actually giving Brenny a little run for his money here. He's only 40 meters back. So I think Todd Key is about to make it up to Joe Brenny here.
Yeah, he said he's going into the red, trying to close that gap down.
I think Key's going to make it up here. So this will be interesting to see if these two cooperate and link up. Bernie going to go into the red and hold on here. So those two will link up. So we'll keep an eye on Bernie and Todd Key here in our paracycling competition. Back to the front of our pro women's field. Godby, Skaloo, Mobbs still going at it. These two unable to get rid of Mobbs here, so I think she's going to be here to the base of the climb. I don't see her. I mean, if you made it this far, Lauren, I think you're probably good, at least until you get to the hard climb.
I think so. The unknown. She's definitely our wild card, isn't she? We don't know much about her. And you know, Skaloo and Godby got to be thinking the same thing. Is they're so used to this, the two of them racing, and they know exactly how each of them race. But now they have this newcomer sitting there, and you know, she is essentially created this break. So they better keep their eye and ears on her for sure, not knowing what to expect from her.
Garrett, sometimes this happens at like international races like the Tour of the Gila. American riders will see new riders come to race that they've never raced, riders that will come over just to do a Tour of the Gila. I remember a lot of like Central American teams, UCI Continental or Pro Continental teams. Sometimes being that unknown rider is a big advantage. So you can kind of slip away. They don't really know what to expect. So I'm wondering if, well, she's going to enjoy the advantage of being the unknown out there today.
It's definitely a benefit where, you know, Mobbs can actually just kind of sit on and not relax because they're riding really hard, but just sit in the draft of these two individuals that are, you know, looking at each other and hopefully, you know, get a little bit of a free ride to the base of the climb and then see what could happen. And but all it takes is one race, right? One result, and then you're kind of knowing and you don't have that advantage anymore. So take advantage of it when you can, and we'll see how she performs here as the stage moves on.
Look at Shalao responding to a move here. You just saw her throwing those shoulders side to side, trying to close down a gap. Looks like she's got a little encouragement there as well. She has two fans. All right, not my best material.
Come on now, that's good. That's good. We'll take it.
I don't get it. Anyway. No.
I think Shalou is probably just like us, wondering who this Mobbs character is, because I saw her pointing at the screen a couple times, maybe amazed at the performance. Godby, meanwhile, hasn't blinked in the last hour and a half. She has been completely locked onto this screen.
First time we've seen her look away. First time.
Yeah.
She heard you.
It's interesting how Godby is riding her time trial bike, it looks like.
Yeah, Godby has ridden the time trial bike all season. I think it's just a comfort thing for her. She doesn't use the time trial bars in the middle, but she spends most of her time on the outside. Comes from a triathlon background, so a lot of times those riders are more comfortable on a time trial bike because that's where they would have spent more of their time training. It looked like Shalao just housed a Coke there on the left side of the screen.
Yeah, I mean, take what you can when you can get it, I guess. You know, caffeine and sugar, just like a gel, essentially. Can't hurt. Whew.
You're probably getting down towards that window where you can start using those quick-acting sugars and carbohydrates. I mean, they're going to be done with this one in the next, let's say, 40 minutes or less of racing. So Yeah, starting to get down to that time where you are scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of calories. So it's important to eat during these races. We see Jackie Godby really focus a lot on her nutrition, constantly eating, constantly drinking, the recovery before and after. And Shalou obviously putting an effort into that as well, making sure that she's keeping the tank topped up.
Garrett, you could probably talk on this. I mean, how fast will she burn through that, or how fast will that hit her system?
Yeah, and that something like a Coca-Cola, you drink that, and within probably a couple minutes, you're starting to absorb some of that in your bloodstream and get a benefit. And what's actually interesting is we actually have some receptors in our mouth. So you could take a little cola or sugary beverage, spit it out, and not even drink it and get some performance benefit because you have sensors in your mouth that go to your central nervous system that sense that sugar as well. So pretty much almost immediately you get some sort of benefit, and with the caffeine, this should carry her now through the end of the race.
Wow. I had no idea. I'm adding that to my startup, Lauren. In addition to performance lighting, I'm adding 0-calorie colas where you just spit it out.
We're just working on your training program. Day one starts now.
Yeah.
But
so that's my plan. I'm just going to wash my mouth with Cokes.
Yeah.
And whatever else Garrett tells me to do.
Make sure to follow that up with a little water, though. You don't want to rot your teeth, right? So,
oh, right.
No, but there are a lot of things. So sometimes when people have bad stomach, right, especially hot environments, etc., and you can't stomach anything, even just rinsing with a little sugar beverage and spitting it out, can give you some sort of benefit. It's not quite the benefit of ingesting it, but it can do, a little bit of a positive.
Lauren, it's not easy, especially in the heat. Like when you go to Silver City and you're adding altitude and heat, the dry air, sometimes eating and drinking is the last thing on your mind.
No doubt. Can I make a confession? Towards the end of a race, not Tour of the Gila, but I was my team comes up. I'm in the break. The team gives me 2 bottles, and there was miscommunication on what was in the bottles. I thought it was water, and I go to pour it over my head, and it was delicious Coke that was all over me and sticky until the finish. It was horrible, but I got second, so I'll take it.
Garrett, any research on dumping Cokes over your head, whether there's performance gains there?
Yeah, I'm not sure you can absorb any through your skin, but it may help your hands. It may help your hands stick to the bar, though, so you won't lose any grip.
What about this Alpecin caffeine shampoo I've been hearing about in bike racing? If you can get caffeine in through your scalp, why not? Why not some sugar and stuff as well?
Brad, how about you try it and let me know how it goes?
I've been washing my hair with Coke for 2 weeks, and I'm not any faster, Coach. Mob showered in caffeine shampoo today. She is crushing it up here with Godby and Skalou.
And like we said, the closer she gets to the end of that, to the end of this race, the more confidence she's going to have, and the more questionable Godby and Shalou are going to start to become, I would think. I mean, Godby's just like pretty just steady in all of these races. Nothing really seems to bother her, but you got to think she's kind of looking over her shoulder a bit about who this newcomer is and how to race against her.
Back to Erin Ayala here. Down to just 1 bottle. She had like 3 on the desk yesterday. And I think she has like a little speaker next to her as well. Maybe got some music going. Big wattage here too, holding it right around 300 watts. which is no easy task for a rider like Aaron Ayala. Isler coming up on Ayala here behind her. She's only 450 meters back, so we may see Isler here soon, Lauren.
Yeah, and if they make connection again, we did see this in the past in past races between the two of them. They've connected, ridden together a little bit, and then separated again. Different circumstances, but I feel like Aaron, coming from that triathlon background, is pretty comfortable in no man's land, and Isler's lived there these last couple of races too. So they are no stranger to this where they are right now on the course. To me, though, it looks as though Isler's given her a bit more effort than Aaron was, but maybe it's just a situation. I mean, you can see she's on a 7% gradient right now.
Individual riding styles too. We see some riders that get out of the saddle, they're throwing their arms all over the place to do 400 watts, and then you see riders like Jackie Gottlieb who can just sit on top of that bike and barely move and do 400 watts. So a lot of it just comes down to your individual riding style. Some riders were known for being out of the saddle, for being very loose on top of the bike, especially when they were climbing. Some riders just move around a lot, and some riders you can see are just much more steady on the bike. It's always fun trying to identify riders and their pedal stroke when we're doing in real life racing. Sometimes you can just look at a rider from a ways off and say, oh, I know exactly who that is. There's only a few riders that ride like that.
You could always, Mara Abbott was always a very distinctive racer. I mean, this is her race. She won this so many times as a hill climber, and she was actually really good in the time trial too, up against Clara. I'm spaced on last name, and Kristen Armstrong. Mara could hold her own, which is impressive because it was so much downhill in that race. But she had that like 70, 80 cadence of just standing up, just mashing a big gear, versus someone that I'm more experienced with, of someone like Katie Hall or Ruth Winder, more of a sit, spin, mash out. It was just the differences are a lot of fun to pay attention to, like you're saying, and it's very clearly you can find those out and see who's who.
And some of it comes down to efficiency. A lot of the smaller, lighter people, they can stand up and put out watts with pretty good efficiency. Whereas when you're bigger, it's better to stay seated, so you're not also fighting your own weight as well when you're going up the hill. And I think a good example is this is going way back in the day. Watching some of the tour, and if you remember Jan Ulrich. Back in the day, he would always just stay seated, where you had your other guys, Marco Pantani, etc., that were always up and down because they tend to be smaller. So
Clara Hughes is who I was trying to think about. Just couldn't get that last name. I have Hansinger in my brain now.
The new star. We've had so many great battles go through Tour of the Gila. I mean, a successful American bike racer, really at some point, you're probably going to go through Silver City, New Mexico. I mean, it's almost impossible to find a pro-continental world tour ride without first getting identified at considered a road races. But for the longest time, Gila has been one of those deciders. Races like Redlands, we have this little calendar of road races in the United States where if you to go to Europe, you want to be a world tour rider, a good performance at a race like Tour of the Gila gets you noticed because all the biggest teams are going to be there, and that's where you sort of get on the radar of those directors that are going to give you that contract next season.
And especially now, Tour of the Gila is sort of one of the last few standing races, that are good stage races here in the U.S. And I think it's important to support these races and to keep them going.
Well, we certainly owe Director Jack Brennan a debt of gratitude for his work in keeping this race alive for so many years. The blood, sweat, and tears that go in behind the scenes to make a race like this happen are really incredible. And Jack getting ready to celebrate the 35th year of Tour of the Gila this year, the 35th, well, I guess, happening of the race. We'll set her a couple years off because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but we're looking good to be back in Silver City this spring. So hopefully everyone's all vaxxed up and ready to rendezvous in Silver City April 27th to May 1st this year.
And the new addition for the amateur races, like that is again such a great race to learn how to be a good stage racer because of the altitude, because of the location, and because of how hard this race is. It's such a great way to just get that education and the length in those stages in your legs as someone wanting to become a bike racer, a professional bike racer. It's such a great race.
Like Aaron and I would love to see Aaron get a chance to race that 1-2-3 women's race because she's had such a good performance on RGT. I think it'd be really cool to see her kind of stack up against some of the other quote-unquote road riders in the country. So it's a great opportunity for riders either looking to make the leap up, or if you've you've established where your life is going and you're not there to look for a pro contract, you just want to challenge yourself. The women's 1-2-3 race at Gila is going to be a great opportunity to do that. They're doing 4 days of racing, so you get a chance for some crit racing, some road racing, and that really is a good mix of stages over those 4 days of racing. That registration open now, and again, you can use the code HELA2022 for 10% off of amateur race registration through next week. You can sign up at tourthegila.com. So if you've been on the fence about maybe hitting that register button and booking those tickets out to Silver City, there's a good excuse to do it. 10% off with code HELA2022.
And that crit course is a good course, again, to kind of learn on. And I think about that, compared to all the other courses throughout the U.S. And because Garrett and I were talking, and it's got a good hill in there, like the race can be won and lost definitely on that, where it is won and lost on that backside. I mean, the first finish line essentially is to the second to last corner at the top of the hill, and then you need a good teammate to take you down to that last corner. But it's not so technical that it's a little bit above your pay grade, above your ability. It's just the right amount of corners, right amount of downhill, uphill, and a good finish line, good safe finish line that I think amateurs would love or should give it a go.
Well, coming up on 10K to go for our front group out there on course. You can see Godby and Skaloo on your screen. We don't have a camera on Mobs, our third rider in this group. I'd be curious to see what that setup is like. But hanging with them, they are about to hit this climb. You can see the elevation profile across the bottom of the two gameplay screens at the top. They are about 5K away from really starting the hardest part of that climb, that first red section.
Shaloo's got quite the audience over there.
It's been slowly building. She's been bringing more and more people into her pain cave with every 20 kilometers or so, someone new shows up. Prime time, Julia Skaloo. Just past 8 o'clock in the evening over in Europe. Or what they would call 1800, 20 o'clock.
Stick to commentating.
Math was never my strong suit.
Neither
was
Brad,
geography, so maybe announcer was a bad choice of careers.
You're supposed to have someone in your ear to tell you that.
That's right. That's right. Someday. We're getting there. Look at the side profiles. There's Skaloo, Godby, and Mobs. Again, we're watching all the data on the screen. There's a couple that comes at you here on RGT, but we're looking at the individual rider stats on the upper left-hand corner. The rider that's highlighted on the leaderboard to the left is the rider whose stats you see. So right now we're following Godby. So The numbers in the upper left and upper right-hand corners correspond to Jackie Godby with this camera right now. We'll move throughout this break and follow Mobbs and Skalou a little bit, but Godby, move over to Julia Skalou here. You see her numbers change, doing 150 watts.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. We're getting close to this, what I'll say, hors d'oeuvre of a climb before the real climb starts, and it'll be interesting to see if Mobbs can hang on up over this first little pitch across the plateau or mesa, and then to the final climb.
Erin Ayala going to do the climb on her own. Easler still has not been able to get up to her at about 550 meters back. So Ayala really putting in a good effort to hold off Megan Easler. She's on about a 4% gradient.
Yeah, it seems like Ayala and Easler are closely matched, but we've always seen Ayala be a slightly stronger and separate consistently these last couple of races. Yeah, so it's fun to see the race within the race of, we got the three up the road and then these two kind of in no man's land and just in their comfort zone at this point, just try and conserve and get the job done and see what you're left with at the end of the day. Whew.
And here's Easler in 5th. Still drilling out the tempo at 4.2 watts per kilo. And holding steady. Look how little her wattage moves in the bottom right screen, the upper left corner of that screen. She hasn't deviated much from like 240. I mean, it's only moved 5 or 6 watts at a time. Really good riding from Easler here.
Like you said, the line underneath all those numbers is kind of a diagram of how that rises and falls on your wattage, and it's almost like a perfect straight line, isn't it, Brad?
Wow, yeah. Easler may be one of the best at that in the game here in the Echelon Racing League. I mean, even Jackie Godby, Julia Skalou don't show that consistency in their power. All right, so as Garrett said, we are serving hors d'oeuvres of the climb out there right now, hitting the first part of it for Julia Skalou on the way up here. She's going to take a little bit of a gap. Godby already into the red zone behind her. You see that power number going red, and looks like Mobbs might be in a little bit of trouble coming off the group just a bit. Now, as they go uphill, the wattage, the advantage of drafting does go down, but you see the upper left corner still saving a significant amount of watts. As Rhea Mobbs tries to hold on here.
I think today is kind of Shalou's race to lose. We've seen her separate from Godby on almost all the climbs, and Godby's having to respond. So I think today is her day. I'm hoping today is Shalou's day, honestly. But I kind of hope Mobbs can make it back at least to the base of the climb.
Godby and owner Skalou fight to Godby today. She says, hey, I know you've been winning the last days here at the Echelon Racing League, but I'm in charge now. As Skalou gets out of the saddle here. And Godby just trying to stay calm.
I think we're all just intently watching
Yeah.
their face, their body language. Like, I'm trying to look for any kind of crack in Godby at all, and the only thing I can see is literally in the corner of her mouth. It changes ever so slightly. That's my indicator. I don't know what you guys are going off of, but
Interesting catch. I'm noticing the cadence, Garrett. It looks like Skalou is going to, mash to the top, whereas Godby keeps a much higher cadence, a much easier gear to pedal. So you see Skalou out of the saddle a lot, pushing the big gear. Godby with a higher cadence, easier pedaling, but able to stay in the saddle longer.
Yeah, and I think this climb, you can get away with sort of mashing a bit of a bigger gear because it's a long climb, but it's still short enough where, a bigger gear that won't necessarily hurt you. But it's everyone's riding style too is a little different. I always like pedaling bigger gears, but we'll see how it works out at the end.
Well, they got rid of Rhea Mobbs. We saw her starting to come off the back. The British rider is now completely out of view here at now 100 meters back. So really, as soon as they hit that climb, Skalou and Godby said goodbye. It was nice riding with you today, but the adults are going to have a meeting on the front here. Still a lot of race to go, 6.4K, but it's all uphill on the way up, so. Mobbs coming back here, redoubling her effort. This too took a little break on the front. Mobbs going to use the opportunity to get up there. Look at the power zones. Godby and Skalou are letting off. They're into the blue zone. They struck a little deal and said, all right, we need a little bit of rest. And
go
Mobbs
right through them,
use
Mobbs. Just go right through them.
Keeping it interesting out here, that's for sure. But looks like she's going to sit in.
Man, y'all had me on mute. I was just yelling into the microphone. Nobody heard me.
Well, Mobbs made it back. Lauren was cheering for Rhea to get through the group, but I think Rhea would say, "Why don't you get out here and ride through the group, Lauren?"
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I guess what I was saying actually when I was muting myself is just this has been a good race from Mobbs. She's been one of the only people in the peloton to actually come up and create this race for these three riders and to put Godby and Skalou under a bit of pressure. So good race by Mobbs all around. No matter what happens today, kudos to her. Ride of the day.
Godby hitting the last gel here at 6 kilometers of racing. Garrett, even this late, Godby's still taking on caffeine and calories here.
Yeah, she'll get a little bit of benefit from some of the sugar she's taken in, but ideally you want to take it in with the last 30-45 minutes, something like that. So we're getting closer to that end of the window, but it's better to top off than to come up empty and bong. So it's not going to hurt anything, especially if you have the appetite for it. Take it on. It's not going to hurt anything.
Hey, fueling for
Hold on,
tomorrow.
I'm writing all this down. Free coaching. So, from what I can tell, don't dump Cokes on your head and just constantly eat gels. That's my plan.
It's not necessarily free. Your bill's in the mail.
Great. I'll pay you in Bitcoin or, you know what? I'll send you an NFT. I'm going to make you an NFT and I'll send that to you.
All right. Sounds great.
All right, down to 5K to go on the front here. This is psychologically, Lauren, we get into that last K, kind of a sense of like, all right, time to go, or did that start when they hit the bottom of the climb?
No, I mean, there's markers in the race, like 25K to go, 10K to go, 15K to go. 5K is a huge marker, because Mobbs is still here with this group. She made it back to them. And the closer you get to the finish line, the more, you get that thought of, well, hey, if I can just suffer, I can stay with them. And so as they call it, like sniffing the finish line, this is good.
And it has to give her quite a bit of confidence that she was able to get dropped and then catch back on. And that's always good for the confidence as well.
Yeah, shows you belong there. I've been noticing Julia Skalou's bottle collection has also been growing. Look at all the empties she has in the bottom left corner of the screen here. That includes that bottle of Coke that we saw her pulling from earlier in the day. So it's a constant battle to stay hydrated and stay fueled up out there, especially on the trainer, Garrett. Anyone that's ever ridden the trainer is like, somehow sweat away. This seems impossible to do in real life. Your body just produces sweat from places that you didn't even know could produce sweat when you get on the trainer.
For sure. And, a lot of times I remember, everything is rusted on the trainer from your salt, and yeah, so you definitely sweat a lot. You don't have the breeze coming through like you do when you're outside. So it's important to maintain that hydration, not only for today, but as Lauren alluded to, tomorrow as well. That's important to maintain your hydration for the penultimate or the grand finale stage tomorrow, the Queen stage.
On the base of the climb, onto the red section here, Shalou getting a little bit of a gap over Jackie Godby, but still 4 kilometers of racing to go. So Godby's got plenty of time to get back up to Shalou, but she will want to close that gap sooner rather than later. It only gets harder as that gap continues. And Shalou staying out of the saddle here. Look at Jackie Godby staring down Shalou in the screen up ahead.
And then Mobs to hang on Godby's wheel. Yeah, that's good racing by Mobs too. Be
Great
curious to
racing,
see if she can hold on all the way to the finish.
Mobs is looking at a one-way ticket to this finish line, and she's thinking, I'll just hitch a ride on the Jackie Godby Express. Godby doesn't look like she's in a real hurry to close this gap. I mean, she's not going into the red zone to close it down. I have to imagine there's an element of making sure you stay within your zone, Lauren. You don't want to go too deep, because the only thing worse than letting a 30-second gap open is completely blowing up and letting that turn into a 30-minute gap.
Exactly. I mean, we've seen all of Godby's racing, and she's totally in control all the time, even when it's hurting to the nth degree. And we were talking about different racing styles and pedaling styles, and Godby's more of a sitter, sit down and mash, and then Shalou, I don't think she's going to sit down the entire climb. But yeah, Shalou is definitely putting Godby under pressure now.
We know it's bad when Jackie Godby gets out of the saddle. It is go time. We are looking at a serious challenge here for Godby. Into second position now as the gap approaching 100 meters up to Julia Skalou. So Skalou may finally be getting it right here on the climb, down to 3.5K to go. Now, we should also talk about the importance of the power to weight ratio, Lauren, because this is huge on a climb, talking about the importance in the game on RGT, which uses a formula of a rider's weight to the ratio of how much power they're creating. A lighter rider obviously needs to produce less power to drag their body up the hill, but Skalou wins in the power to weight ratio battle. She's a very light rider, so she's going to be a much better climber, and RGT will reward that.
Yep, we saw that at Iron Horse, essentially, because that was the only other climb that we've kind of had during the race season. And Shalou made that separation every single time. There is a small bit of the course right towards the end. There's what 500 meters that it's flat or a little drop, and so Godby will probably make up a little time there. But Shalou's going to try and extend this lead as much as possible, seeing that she was almost a minute back in the time trial. So Shalou's got to push forward and got to take every opportunity and every chance she can to make up as much time as possible to the finish.
I think it's great to see these individual profiles, and you can look at the difference of the riders too, right? You can see Godby, they're basically riding at threshold, and her heart rate's 173, whereas we look at Shalou, right, and she's at 192, 193. So there's quite a bit of difference from a physiological perspective in that standpoint, and just how everyone is different.
Like a hummingbird heart rate over there at 192. Just, oh man, I haven't seen 193. I won't ever see 193 anymore. I'm getting old.
No, that it is impressive, she's in the mid 190s, and that's pretty much what she can sustain from a functional standpoint, and that's pretty high, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Godby looking like she might be getting a little frustrated here. I saw her shaking her head a couple times. I think she put in some efforts and tried to close gaps, and it didn't happen. And now she's like, well, what do I do? Gap is going up 180 meters up to Julia Skalou. This is now a major gap. I mean, when you're talking about 180 meters on this climb, that is some serious time. And Godby is in a place that she has not been in a long time here in the Echelon Racing League, and that's in second position.
Ever. Yeah.
And I think Skalou has to make her time up here today, because it finishes on the climb, and this is where she can get back into the overall race. Whereas tomorrow, I think, suits Godby a little bit better. And so I think today is the day where Skalou has to take advantage.
Yeah, definitely more opportunity for Godby tomorrow. So I think Julia knew it, and she has definitely been targeting this one, Lauren. The way that we've seen Julia racing here in the Echelon Racing League, she's been trying to figure out RGT, right? Because most of her background is in Zwift racing. So it took a little bit of time before she figured out the platform. But then we got to watch her try new things over the last 3 weeks. She would try each week to beat Jackie Godby in a different way. And I think it was just about finding the right course that ultimately was the deciding factor. Godby clearly better on the flats and in the criteriums, but when the road goes uphill, it seems like Skalou may be the best climber here in the ERL.
Yeah, and playing to her strengths 100%, like finally getting the opportunity to finish on an uphill. And we've seen she has not sat down yet. And she's running at like a low 50s cadence, just mashing out this climb. So, yeah, I think Shalou's finally putting it together, putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And today is her day, and she's definitely shining.
And Garrett, for a lot of riders, the Tour of the Gila represents one of the, like you said, the few opportunities that you have to do road racing like this and climbing like this. There are so many riders that just suffer through all the crits all season, but they're really waiting for their chance to do these road races and to do some big climbs. And I think Shalou is kind of feeling that way here into week 4 of the Echelon Racing League, where she was like, just give me some mountains to race against Jackie Godby. She finally got him today and took advantage of it.
It's a great race for climbers to, showcase their skills, and it's a very European type race. And the roads are, not only are they kind of rough and chip sealed, which makes it more of a challenge, but they're narrow as well in a lot of places. So it definitely has a European feel, and a lot of these climbers who go uphill can showcase what they have compared to doing a criterium at the America's Dairyland or something like that.
The 1.8K for Godby, 1.6K for Skalou. See Skalou, our numbers consistently higher as well. She's averaging about 6 watts per kilo on the way up here. Jackie comes steady between 5.3 and 5.5. So Skalou is just throwing more watts at the problem out there today. Both out of the saddle, both pushing big gears.
Oh, man. This just hurts watching.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure both of you remember this point of the climb. You're 1.5K away. You're starting to feel like you might be tasting those gels again. Yeah. And you're watching the winners come down the hill.
Exactly. I was going to say, I've seen the entire peloton and waved at all of them. I'm doing like an extra 45 minutes than any of them were doing.
I always thought that was cool, though. I always loved during the big stage races where we'd be doing a podium and then the teammates ride in and you can, see your teammate who maybe won the race up on the podium and you get to come through the line. That was always a cool moment for a lot of riders on days like this at Tour of the Gila. So they're about to hit the 1K to go marker for Julia Skalou up on the front, about 300 meters away, which will be the longest 300 meters of her life on the trainer here before she hits. You can now just barely see the red banner up in the distance for Julia Skalou.
And she needs to continue to keep digging deep and trying to put in time into Godby, just from an overall standpoint. Impressive ride from the stage, but for the overall, she needs to keep her head down and stomping on those pedals.
That's a great point. Yeah, we haven't really talked much about the GC implications today, but Godby looking at about a 40-second pad coming into the day today, so it might be actually close to that by the time Godby hits the line behind Skalou here. So we'll see, but there are going to be some major GC implications happening here.
Yeah, and talking about that, I can just imagine Godby's just going to try and limit her losses, especially going into tomorrow if it doesn't finish on a climb. She'll just do her best to keep her overall lead. Can't imagine what Shalou's max heart rate would be.
Well, it couldn't get much higher. She was pushing 170, then 180, 196 right now. Looking a little further back, I also see Mobs still in the hunt at 250 meters back from Godby. That's about the same gap between Skalou and Godby. So Mobs is having a great day today. Even though she lost contact with the group at the bottom of the climb, looks like she is going to stay in this one for a respectable third place behind these two. Skalou, meanwhile, inside her last 600 meters of racing on the way up to the line, and doesn't look like Godby's going to get her today. Julia Skalou will finally get the victory that she has been hunting for in the Echelon Racing League since week 1. And it takes here until week 4 for Skalou to finally get it right. Day 2 of the virtual tour of the Gila. The Mogollon climb treated Julia well today.
The longest 500 meters of her life.
Well, it finishes on a 9% gradient on the way up here. Godby 300 meters back. Skalou's doing the math in her head right now and saying, I got this stage, but I got to keep, as Garrett said, because you have to put that time in to the GC. Godby just trying to salvage her race today. Hold on to as much time as she can.
And she will. I mean, she's going to be in enough time to keep her overall. But what a great stage win for Shalou now.
Into her last 150 meters. Well, the Rose Beast Mode rider has been working on this win for the better part of this indoor racing season. And it's finally going to come good here in January as Julia Skalou will beat Jackie Godby to the top of stage 2 at the virtual tour of the Gila. Your winner today on the Mogollon climb.
And those are some impressive numbers at the end. She was over 7 watts per kilogram, and that's pretty impressive to finish up the stage.
Yeah, in terms of raw power, Julia Skalou really is an incredible case study. Pretty cool chance to watch her racing. Jackie Godby on her way in now. Going to finish up the day right around 6 watts per kilo here.
I don't know. Did Shalou take her on time?
It's going to be close. We will get the calculations going here for our general classification. She needed, I think it was a little over 40. So we'll keep an eye on that time gap, doing some math behind the scenes right now. Meanwhile, Rhea Mobs, the most surprising ride of the day by far, storming her way onto the podium in 3rd position here.
And a great ride. Definitely, I think, ride of the day. I mean, well, I don't know. Shalou finally taking a win is probably going to be the ride of the day. But surprise of the day for sure is Mobs.
Well, this will certainly put a target on her back heading into the Gila Monster stage tomorrow. It at least won't be a surprise anymore when that selection of 3 happens, and Gabi and Skulu won't have to say, who's this rider?
It'd be interesting to see how she did yesterday in the time trial and how much she's moved up today. It's going to be a ton.
Yeah.
That's a very impressive ride.
Megan Easler showing off the new Project Echelon kit that we were talking about earlier. The water theme.
I love how the riders and teams are able to update their jerseys in RGT. They make it relatively easy to change your team jersey, which Project Echelon is one of the best about doing. Again, they're designed this year inspired by water, which they say is significant because it represents an immense power and force that can change the landscape. At the same time, water has a rhythmic and calming effect that allows us to reflect. At Project Echelon, I believe physical activity has the same power and impact. So, cool little story behind those Project Echelon jerseys. Let's go back to Erin Ayala in her Velocity Vixen kit here in 5th position, wrapping up our top 5 for the day.
Yeah, Brad, I was thinking we were so focused, which is great, on the top 3, top 2 racing it out, that Easler came past Ayala at some point here at the end. Because Ayala had a pretty significant gap on Easler, and it just seemed like I would have thought that Ayala was going to keep that. But, you know, Ayala's just suffering a bit more today, it seems. Again, maybe not so advantageous power to weight ratio potentially for the climb at the finish. Easler is more geared towards this finish.
So Easler about to hit her 1K to go marker. And then Ayala won't be far behind. Quick look at the Julia Shalou fan club here. She's got a little race treat for her #1 fan.
Best fans ever.
All right, so there Ayala has the Flamme Rouge inside as well. About to head into her final K of racing. Easler staying on the gas in the orange power zone here. It would be easy at this point to say, you know what, I'm close enough, did my work, I can take it easy, but Easler staying on the power here.
Yeah, as she should. I mean, again, you know, thinking about overall GC implications here. And Ayala was 3rd yesterday, am I right? So this could definitely move Easler up and into the podium spot.
So we're going to let our top 5 get in, then we'll try and grab a word with some of our podium finishers. Trying to get Julia Scalu on. I don't know. We'll get a word with Jackie Godby. Always gracious with her time after a race. Watch Ayala and Easler on the way in here as well. The other important thing that I'm watching, in the Zoom room right now is the riders cooling down, getting ready for tomorrow. It'd be very easy to just get off the bike, right? You just want to lay on the cold floor and try and cool down. But the race continues, Lauren. You got to keep cooling down.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen in the last, 5-6 years, right, Garrett? I mean, just such a everybody jumps off their bike at the finish and then jumps right onto the trainer again to cool down and just pedaling at 100 watts because you go from lactic acid full gas to 0 and all that's just going to load up in your legs. Am I right? I mean, that's the new, again, another new science that's come out.
Yeah, just cooling down. It just, you have a lot of your physical activity hormones, sympathetic nervous system. It just helps you calm down, relax, remove any metabolic waste products that may be accumulating in your lower extremities, and helps you get ready for tomorrow. And also it plays a big mental role, right? Just to relax, calm down, and then regroup and start putting your focus towards the recovery and the race tomorrow.
You got that, Brad? Recovery.
Well, yeah, got it. I'm working on it right now. I'm going to get some Jackie Godby chocolate going here for my recovery. The recovery has already started for Jackie, getting ready for Sunday tomorrow into the Gila Monster. Let's go over to Emma, who has Jackie in the SIS Zoom room.
1, go.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad. I'm here in the Zoom with Jackie Godby. Jackie, a little great ride, but a little bit of a tougher race today. How are you feeling after this race?
I am absolutely 1, shattered, and 2, in awe of Julia's watts. That was amazing. That was a tough race, and oh my goodness, the speed she put out today, the power, that was incredible. So, like last night I said, I was really looking forward to this race, really looking forward to a different type of climb. And I think we saw that today. I think we saw a couple of new riders highlighted. I think we saw the climbers really get their due credit for what they do well. So I am absolutely shattered, exhausted, tired, but really, really happy with the race today.
Yeah, talking a little bit more about that, we saw a lot more competition within this race. Can you talk a little bit about the 2 racers that were with you at the front for the majority of the race, Mobs and Shalel? Can you talk a little bit more about what their competitiveness brings to your game?
Yeah, so, coming into this race, you come in with plans, and sort of like a battlefield, all plans stop the minute the first shot is fired. So, I had a couple plans, was I just going to TT off the front if I was able to really capitalize on those early downhills? Was I just going to race my own race the instant we hit the first of those sort of final climbs into the hill? And I did not anticipate Mob at all. So when she made the breakaway with Julia and I, all plans go out the window, and I get really excited because this is racing, this is thinking on the fly, and this is just fun. And I really, really enjoyed that moment when she just broke away from the rest of the pack. And, I, through the screen, I almost, met eyes with Julia. You can't because you're racing, but had we been in real life, I feel like we would have shared a look and been like, we know how this game ends. We chase her on the downhill. Like, we've been through this before. So, it was a totally different game today. I love to see it. And I just hope we get Mob up there again. I hope we get more strong riders joining the pack, joining that sort of front group, throwing punches, and just making this the fun, strategic game it really is.
Stage 2 is done. We go into stage 3 tomorrow. What are you taking away from this race into Sunday?
Well, Sunday is 30 miles longer, so we're going to start with that. But I'm going to take away, I got to be real careful on these uphills. I am going against some of the best climbers in the game here. And that means I need to bring my best physical game. I need to be my best mental game. And in the end, I'm honored just to toe the line with them. And it's a lot of fun. So absolutely huge congratulations to Julia for her first win in the series today. It's much deserved. She's such a tough rider, and that was absolutely impressive.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jackie, and we'll see you tomorrow for some more great racing. Back to you, Brad.
Never ceases to amaze me how gracious Jackie Godby is. The first thing she says is, I hope she's back tomorrow. I hope Mob is in the mix tomorrow as well. Can you imagine a pro bike racer saying, yeah, I wish more riders would finish with me in the front group? That's awesome.
I think that's, yeah, exactly. I mean, Jacqueline just has such a great outlook on all of this, and she loves the competition. She loves the threat, and like we were talking, sure enough, like Mobs goes up the road, and the two of them kind of look at each other like, "Wait a minute, who's this?" And so, yeah, Jacqueline's pretty excited to have a third compatriot up there now.
Todd Key, our paracycling leader, on his way in here as well. Looks like he has dropped Joe Bernier behind him, and Todd Key is on his way to a paracycle victory here. And Todd's staying in the red zone all the way up here as well, inside his last 500 meters. So I think Key will take our paracycling win here today. Garrett, looking forward to tomorrow, the Gila Monster stage. How does that climb compare to today's climb? If you just look at the two climbs head-to-head, I mean, how is the Gila Monster stage of tomorrow stack up against today's Mogollon climb?
Well, today's climb was tough because it's right at the finish, right? So the climbers can get some big time gaps. Whereas tomorrow, it's kind of bumpy with some big climbs in it, and then towards the finish there is a bit of a climb, but it's not to any extent. It's not the major climb tomorrow, and it's not to the extent of the climb that we have today. So if Godby, for example, gets put under pressure early on the climbs, then she has time to catch back before the finish. So it's a different type of race tomorrow, more climbing, but where the climbs are located make it a different race altogether.
Well, and certainly the third day of a weekend of racing will have its effect, Lauren. After a time trial and a big day of climbing today, we're going to see who has the endurance as well tomorrow.
Exactly, like Godby said, tomorrow's 30 miles longer, so yep. You better save a little bit. And you can kind of almost hear a little bit that she's not nervous, but excited about that it's going to be pretty tricky for her to kind of figure out how to continue to win and to continue to hold that advantage over these climbers now.
Well, it will be certainly a rematch on the big climb up to the Heat tomorrow as we watch Todd Key roll in to win his para category. Looks like Joe Bernier will go second, and I think Dennis Perrin going to hold on for third, although he's got a little battle going with Brooks back there for the final podium spot. And it looks like Sander Koeman's still going to lock into the front of our hand cycling competition. Here's where things ended so far with our 6 riders in at the front of our pro women's race. The Julia Scalu doing 4.94 average watts per kilo on the day compared to Jackie Godby's 4.19. She just crushed it with watts out there today, Lauren.
Yeah, and even Jacqueline said that at the end to see the watts that she was putting out. Even she was impressed. So, she didn't have an answer to it, which is fine. I mean, you can only do so much as an athlete. So that is very impressive numbers.
And Garrett Rhea Mobbs is looking at this one saying, I did 4.5 average watts per kilo. Jackie Godby in second only did 4.19. So I know I've got the power. It's just a matter of using it the right way tomorrow.
Yeah, an impressive ride today by Rhea Mobbs, and she was the initiator. She got things going, and then she's able to hang on until that final climb, and then to hold her own. So looks like she's figuring things out. And tomorrow, I would say that the other two have to keep an eye out for her.
Well, Julia Scalu moving into the GC lead after today's result as well. A little bit of back of the napkin math. It gives her an 8-second lead over Jackie Godby heading in tomorrow. This could not be a better setup, Lauren. An 8-second lead into the last day of racing, and it's all going to come down to a big day of climbing. Let's take a look at that map before we bid this race farewell for today. Again, it's the Gila Monster Climb tomorrow. It's a little bit longer, but they've got more flat riding, and then Lauren, once you hit this section, all bets are off.
The beast. Yeah, this is going to be a great race, and to have it play out like it is and having Shalou now in the lead, I'm super excited about tomorrow. And it's going to be a hard race for Godby to try and come back and get that win.
We'll be back for stage 3 of the virtual tour of the Gila. Same time tomorrow. Our broadcast starts at 11 o'clock Eastern. We'll start with our pro men, and then pro women have their premier time slot tomorrow. So for Garrett Peltonen and Lauren Hall, my name is Brad Soner saying thanks for watching stage 2 of the virtual tour of the Gila in the Echelon Racing League today. We'll see you tomorrow, 11 o'clock Eastern, for the start of stage 3.